Chapter 1097. When Mu Jinghu heard this, the smile on his face became unnatural for a moment, and he only said, "Speaking of which, we arrived at the same time. When Huzi, Bing Tang, and I returned to the capital, you had just set off. Meng Fox knew that you were coming to Huichuan and was worried about your safety, so I rushed over to see how you were doing." He shook the thin mask on his hand and smiled. "I originally wanted to sneak in quietly, but Mr. Xie said that in the past he insisted on making this for me. When I entered just now, I was almost recognized." Qin Yining smiled and nodded, vaguely aware that Mu Jinghu was deliberately avoiding the topic of Qiu Feishan and Brother Yan. But there were many people at this time, so it was not the time to ask in detail. When Jian heard that Bing Tang and Huzi had returned to the capital, she said happily, "Bing Tang has already returned?" "Yes, he was worried that I would be in danger. So Wang Yi left them in the capital, and I came alone." Ji Yun nodded repeatedly. "Wang Yi is thoughtful. This place is indeed dangerous. But with Mr. Mu here, the princess's safety can be guaranteed." Mu Jinghu's ability was known by both the Silver Mask Spy and the people of the Qingtian Alliance. When he came, everyone immediately felt relieved, as if even if there were thousands of soldiers and horses outside, they would not be afraid. "This is good. With Mr. Mu here, we just have to cooperate, and we will definitely be able to protect the princess and break out safely," Jing just said happily. Liao Zhibing, Meng Qin, and the others also sighed a long breath. Qin Yining also felt relieved. He asked someone to make tea, and everyone sat down. Qin Yining asked, "How did you sneak in without being discovered? What's the situation outside? We have been trapped here, and we can only hear people talking about the war outside the wall. It seems that the situation is not optimistic, but no one knows the situation of Duke Ding. Is Duke Ding really defeated like a landslide?" Mu Jinghu smiled and said, "It's easy to sneak in here. The situation outside was tense, but it wasn't like the army was completely defeated. Before I entered the city, I went to Duke Dinghua's camp first. Although the Taitan suddenly appeared and attacked Duke Dinghua from behind when he was attacking the city, he was caught off guard and lost a lot of soldiers. However, he was experienced in battles and responded in time. He still had the strength to fight against the Taitan." Qin Yining couldn't help but let out a long sigh. Even if they couldn't stand Li Qitian's actions, De Zhou was still De Zhou, and the people were innocent. The last thing Qin Yining wanted was for the Taitan cavalry to step into De Zhou, trample on their land, and kill their people. "I wonder how the Taitan came to Huichuan County. You should know that although this place is located in the north, it is still far from the border." Duke Ding didn't investigate clearly either. Mu Jinghu said, "When I went to his place, I only took a look. Because I wasn't very familiar with him, I was afraid that I would be suspected of spying on military intelligence, so I didn't ask in detail." Qin Yining nodded in understanding. "Duke Dinghua is strict in managing the army. I think you have already put in a lot of effort to find out this information. As long as Duke Dinghua still has the strength to fight, it's a good thing. In the current situation, Duke Dinghua's army is stationed outside the city, and the Taitan and Liu Heng's troops in Huichuan County are attacking him from both sides. Why don't we think of a way to solve the crisis in Huichuan County and let Duke Dinghua's people into the city?" Everyone was silent. "Princess's idea is good, but it's not easy to do. Liu Heng is buying people's hearts in Huichuan County. In addition, when Duke Dinghua attacked the city, he accidentally injured many people who went to help defend the city. Presumably, even if we let Duke Dinghua enter the city, the people will not agree and will still do something behind his back." After listening to Liao Zhibing's analysis, everyone present couldn't help but sigh. When it came to their own interests, the people's emotions were the easiest to incite. If they didn't hurt their own people, most people only saw their own benefits. Liu Heng smashed the big families in the city and gave the money to the people, successfully buying people's hearts. Then, he schemed to let the people participate in the defense of the city, which was equivalent to sending them to their deaths. However, the lie of "Your Majesty wants to kill them" made these people willingly go. Some of them were mistakenly killed by Jiziyu, which deepened their previous understanding of the imperial court. In such a situation, If Qin Yining wanted to cooperate with Jiziyu, it wouldn't be difficult. With Mu Jinghu, Lu Heng's troops guarding outside the yamen wouldn't be a match for them. However, how could the people's emotions be appeased? Just like how Lu Heng and Jiziyu had to keep a close watch on the yamen when they were fighting, afraid that they would come out and stab them in the back. When Jiziyu led the troops to defend the city against the Taitan, he was most afraid that the people would stab him in the back. Qin Yining sighed. I came here with anger and lost my cool first. I didn't notice the abnormality in the city, which is equivalent to stepping into the trap that Lu Heng had planned for a long time. He set up such a big trap to start a war. That's right. He destroyed the imperial mausoleum, incited the people's emotions, and led your majesty's people to come and suppress them. Liao Zhibing suddenly said, Princess Consort, the timing of the Taitan people arriving here is too coincidental. Do you think is it possible that Lu Heng deliberately led the Taitan people here? Qin Yining also thought of this. If the northern cities are fine, then it's fine. If not, then Lu Heng would be a sinner who colluded with foreign enemies. Qin Yining and Lu Heng had different thoughts. People could be selfish for their own sake, but they couldn't lose their bottom line. If they hurt the innocent people to achieve their goals, wouldn't they feel guilty when they stood on top of the corpses of the people in the future to enjoy glory and wealth? The atmosphere in the room became oppressive again. Qin Yining ordered everyone to go outside and listen to what Lu Heng's rebel troops had to say. When there was no one else in the room except for Ji Yun, Qin Yining asked, Young Master Mu, did something happen to Boss Chiu? Don't mention that woman. Mu Jinghu's face instantly darkened. Qin Yining was shocked. Mu Jinghu's personality wasn't gentle, but he treated his wife well. Qiu Feishan was the wife that Mu Jinghu snatched away, and she worked hard to give birth to Brother Yin for him. When Qiu Feishan fell ill, Mu Jinghu was so anxious that he hurriedly brought Bing Tang to treat Qiu Feishan. How did it become like this now? Qin Yining deliberated and said, Did they quarrel? It's normal for couples to quarrel. Wang Yi and I also quarreled, but we let it go after a while. Boss Chiu is a woman, but she's being manipulated by her family. She has to manage the four-way shop, take care of Brother Yin, and deal with Qiu Yuanqing. She's still sick. You have to understand her. Understand? I don't want to see her again for the rest of my life. Mu Jinghu gritted his teeth, got up, and left in a huff. Qin Yining looked at Mu Jinghu's back in shock and didn't know what to do for a moment. Ji Yin was also surprised and said after a while, Young Master Mu also has such a temper. What's wrong? Qin Yining shook his head, and there was some worry in his eyes. Although Qiu Feishan's position was unclear at the beginning, and her marriage with Mu Jinghu was also forced at the beginning, and it was mixed with a lot of benefits. But she could see that Qiu Feishan really had feelings for Mu Jinghu, and Mu Jinghu liked Qiu Feishan even more. She hoped that Mu Jinghu's family could be harmonious and happy. Now that she saw Mu Jinghu like this, he must have a knot in his heart, and she had to think of a way to reconcile with him. Another night passed, and the next morning, Jingzhe, Liao Zhibing, and the others heard bad news. Princess, Duke Dinghua's army is fighting with the Taitan, and it seems that they are losing. The people in the city are now panicking, and the Taitan have defeated Duke Dinghua. Won't they attack the city next? What should the people do then? Qin Yining heard this and immediately stood up and said with a serious face, No, we have to think of a way as soon as possible. Jilan is outside the city with the soldiers and horses, and they're all from Dezhou, but the people of Huichuan County are dragging him down. How can this go on? Qin Yining immediately led the people to find Lu Weigui. Lu Weigui didn't bring his private advisor and deputy county magistrate with him, so Qin Yining sent people to protect Lu Weigui. When he found that the deputy county magistrate had the intention to kill Lu Weigui and take his head to the Taitan, he immediately tied him up. Lu Weigui was very grateful to Qin Yining, so when he saw Qin Yining, he was very grateful, and his attitude was more respectful than before. Qin Yining told him all the information she received. Lu Weigui's face was wrinkled like a bitter gourd. Princess, what should we do? This lowly official is too useless. This lowly official should rush out with a sword and take down Lu Hong, that rebel who can't do anything right. But this lowly official is just a scholar. Qin Yining said, Official Lu has already done very well. But now is not the time for us to defend the Yamen. I think we should rush out, occupy the city gates, and open the double doors to let Duke Dinghua's troops in. Otherwise, if Duke Dinghua is defeated, Dezhou will have one less main force to fight against the Titan. This is no longer a simple matter of pacifying a rebellion, but it involves the throne of Dezhou. Yes, your highness is right. Lu Weigui wiped his sweat. Although he was afraid, he still said righteously, this lowly official will gather people and think of a way to rush out. Even if we have to risk our lives, we can't let the Titan succeed. Seeing Lu Weigui's attitude, Qin Yining relaxed a lot. As long as he didn't oppose and didn't drag them down, there was a chance for things to turn around. Qin Yining smiled comfortingly and said, Official Lu doesn't need to worry. Wang Yi has arranged for a master. He pointed behind him to Mu Jinghu, who had already disguised himself as an ordinary person. This chivalrous man is very skilled in martial arts. Those guards outside will be taken care of by him in just a few moves. If Official Lu agrees, we will gather our brothers. When this chivalrous man takes care of some people outside, we can take the opportunity to rush out and think of a way to capture Lu Hong, occupy the county, and open the city gates to let Duke Dinghua in. Lu Weigui's eyes widened when he heard this. This chivalrous man can resist the hundreds of people outside the Yamen by himself? Mu Jinghu didn't say anything and turned to go out. Chapter 1098. Lu Weigui was still in a daze. This chivalrous man looked ordinary, but his temper was unusual. He turned around and left without saying a word. He did not even give him time to arrange for people to help him. Was this person too stubborn, or was he too capable that he did not care if there were people to help him? Lu Weigui was puzzled, but he could not show it on his face. He immediately ordered his subordinates to follow him. Qin Yining was the same as Lu Weigui. He knew that he would only cause trouble if he went out. Therefore, he waited there quietly, holding his breath as he listened to the commotion outside the wall. Soon, a wave of scolding came from the other side of the wall. Damn it, where did this bastard come from? This is the place that the Lu family's head has circled. Not even a bird can fly out. You guys must have eaten a bear's heart and leopard's guts. Don't tell me you don't want to live anymore. Go back obediently, and we might spare your lives. If you don't listen to us and have the guts to barge in, we can only kill you. Qin Yining's heart was in his throat when he heard the other party's words. Mu Jinghu's martial arts were excellent, but the other party had the advantage in numbers. Qin Yining did not distrust Mu Jinghu, but the incident of killing an old master with random fists was not an exception. She did not hear Mu Jinghu's reply, but in the blink of an eye, she heard the sounds of fists and feet colliding and screams coming from outside. Jian was curious and excited. She wanted to watch the show, but she was worried about Qin Yining's safety. Qin Yining saw her itchy look, as if a kitten had scratched her heart. He could not help but laugh and say, Go take a look. Come back and tell me the situation. Jian's face turned red, but she immediately nodded. She ran to the bottom of the wall with light steps, found a ladder, and climbed up to see the situation outside. With this look, Qian was so shocked that he was dumbfounded. Wherever Mu Jinghu stood, he could only see people falling like vegetables. The bailiffs and soapmen from the Yamen followed behind Mu Jinghu with their swords in hand. They did not even have the chance to attack. Although Lu Hong had arranged for a large number of rebels, they could not withstand Mu Jinghu's suppression in terms of martial arts. In just a short while, they had already lost their will to fight and were showing signs of defeat. Jian hurriedly told Qin Yining what she had seen. Qin Yining's fair face blossomed into his first brilliant smile in many days. Very good. We can't let this opportunity slip by. Let's take this opportunity to rush out. He turned around and instructed Lu Weigui, order someone to stay behind and keep the courtyard door properly. Don't let the women in the family go out easily and arrange for people to protect them. Yes, thank you for your concern, Your Highness. This lowly official will arrange it now. Lu Weigui nodded excitedly. After giving some instructions, he led his men and followed Qin Yining's group out of the yamen. At this time, rebel soldiers were scattered all over the ground. Not a single one of them was alive. The smell of blood was very pungent. Qin Yining frowned slightly, but his expression was still calm. However, Lu Weigui was not as calm as Qin Yining. In all his life, this was the first time he had seen such a scene of corpses strewn all over the ground. In addition, the rebel soldiers had their necks broken, their lumbar vertebrae broken, and their chests torn open. There were all kinds of miserable deaths. If it wasn't for his face and the fact that there were so many people staring at him, Lu Weigui would have jumped up in anger. Everyone was silent at this moment. They followed Qin Yining and moved forward. They could not help but sigh in their hearts. Fortunately, this chivalrous man was one of them. If he was someone arranged by Lu Heng, how could they still have the chance to defend the yamen? They would have been torn apart long ago. Qin Yining naturally knew of Mu Jinghu's abilities, but it was the first time she had seen such a cruel method of killing opponents. Mu Jinghu had a flexible sword at his waist, but he did not use it. He insisted on using his hands. Such a violent and hardy killing not only made the enemy tremble in fear, but also made his own people feel anxious. Qin Yining suddenly remembered that she had asked Mu Jinghu about Xiao Feishan. At that time, Mu Jinghu must have been very annoyed, right? Perhaps he was just using this opportunity to vent his emotions. Qin Yining sighed. The quarrel between the young couple could actually make Mu Jinghu have such a big reaction. Since ancient times, heroes have a weakness for the charms of beautiful women. While her thoughts were running wild, the group had successfully followed Mu Jinghu out of the yamen. At this time, the rebel soldiers arranged by Lu Heng had already fled for their lives. Mu Jinghu grabbed a handkerchief to wipe the bloodstains on his hands, threw it away casually, and walked towards Qin Yining. Lu Weigui and the others behind Qin Yining all took a step back, their eyes full of fear. Mu Jinghu did not seem to care about other people's gazes and was too lazy to care about others. He only asked Qin Yining, "Are we going to seize the city gate now?" Qin Yining nodded, her eyes full of worry. She wanted to ask Mu Jinghu what happened to Xiao Feishan, but after opening her mouth, she swallowed her questions. Mu Jinghu seemed to be aware of Qin Yining's thoughts, but his expression was covered by a thin mask. Mu Jinghu turned and strode towards the city gate. Lu Weigui immediately shouted at his subordinates, "Hurry up and follow him. Take back the city gate and resist the Tatan. If the Tatans enter the city, the people in the city will be in danger." The subordinates naturally knew this. Everyone was from Huichuan, and their families were in the city, so they were naturally the most concerned about the survival of the people here. Everyone rushed towards the city gate in a mighty manner. At this time, the people were hiding in their homes, and even if they heard the commotion outside, few had the courage to come out and check. When the people near the yamen smelled the thick and pungent smell of blood in the air, they were really scared out of their wits. Only the strong men who were instigated by Lu Heng to defend the city against the imperial army were still guarding the city gate fearlessly. Seeing that the city gate was right in front of them, Qin Yining said to Mu Jinghu, who was walking in front of him, "Don't kill the people here. If we anger the people, it will be inconvenient for us to do anything in the future. Also, we need to find a way to find out Lu Heng's whereabouts. Once we capture him, we will be able to find out his deployment and find out what cooperation he has with the Tatan." Mu Jinghu nodded. "I will first help these people to take down the city. Then I will go and find Lu Heng's whereabouts. Lu Heng has many experts around him. You have to be more careful." "Don't worry. This won't be a problem for me." Mu Jinghu smiled, turned around, and stepped onto the stairs. When the subordinates saw the powerful warrior rushing in front, they instantly felt their blood boil and their lungs hurt. One by one, they drew their swords and rushed up. Qin Yining was carefully protected by Ji Yun, Jing Zhe, Liao Zhibing, and the others. From here, they could not see the situation on the city wall, but they could hear the screams and cries of alarm. Not long after, Qin Yining saw Mu Jinghu quickly walking down the stairs. It's already over? Mu Jinghu nodded. We have already captured the ordinary people on the city wall and taken back the city gate. However, I feel that the current situation is not right. The situation is not right? Qin Yining's voice was slightly raised. Mu Jinghu said, it was too easy to take back the city gate. There are not many guards arranged by Lu Heng for such an important place. Most of them are the strong men captured from the city and the ordinary people who volunteered to defend the city. Qin Yining's gaze turned sharp. When did this situation start? It started when the Taitan people launched a sneak attack on Duke Ding. Qin Yining lowered her eyes, her long eyelashes like crow feathers casting 2 rows of small fan-like shadows on her fair face. Her cherry lips were pale, and after a long time, she said, I have a bad guess. I'm afraid that the cities in the north are no longer safe. At this time, Lu Weigui was leading people to clean up the mess on the city wall. Qin Yining saw that only his subordinates and Mu Jinghu were around, so he said in a low voice, Lu Heng obviously withdrew his main forces after the Taitan arrived. The people guarding the city wall are all abandoned pawns. His real goal is not to destroy the Imperial Mausoleum, but to lure the Taitan people here. Silence was like a winding vine, wrapping everyone in it tighter and tighter. They could not imagine that the head of the Lu family, the former Zhong Yiba, who was a noble gentleman, would actually do something like luring the Taitan people into the Zhou's territory without caring about the lives of the ordinary people. In Qin Yining's heart, this person used to have a noble character, but now his image was completely shattered. One should not be so selfish as to ignore the lives of others in order to achieve one's goal. Moreover, Lu Heng was not just scheming against one life. From a moment he blew up the Imperial Mausoleum, no, perhaps even earlier, he wanted to use the blood of the innocent people to repay the lives of the Lu family members who were killed by Li Qitian. Princess Consort, what should we do now? Ji Yun said with some apprehension. This servant feels a little gloomy here. Do you think that Lu Heng will come back with his men? He purposely lured us here so that he could capture you. He won't, Qin Yining said. His goal has been achieved, and the people in the city have been used by him enough. He won't make a move in the short term. He is a smart person. He understands the benefits of adding firewood to the left and right, and then sitting on top of the mountain to watch the tigers fight. At this moment, Lu Weigui's excited voice came from the city gate tower. He shouted loudly, Open the city gate and send scouts to report to Duke Ding that Huichuan County is now under initial control. Duke Ding, please lead the army into the city. Yes, everyone responded, and someone immediately went to the barracks outside the city to inform Jiziyu that he could enter the city at any time. Qin Yining looked at the group of people led by Lu Weigui down the city wall like Tide dumplings. His originally worried heart gradually relaxed. Princess Consort, these are the people in the city. How should we deal with them? Lu Weigui came in front of Qin Yining and bowed respectfully. Qin Yining raised his eyebrows and walked slowly in front of the 100 people. Seeing that most of them were able-bodied men and a small number of women and old people, he smiled and said, Did you help Lu Heng's rebel army to deal with Duke Ding, who was sent by the imperial court to quell the rebellion? The people all lowered their heads and pursed their lips without saying a word. It was obvious that the emotions stirred up by Lu Heng's words had not yet subsided. Chapter 1099. The commoners made up their minds not to speak. They looked at Qin Yining with eyes full of fear and resentment. Obviously, they still couldn't control their emotions. They saw Qin Yining and his people as the lackeys of the imperial court. Qin Yining said with a sullen face, blowing up the imperial mausoleum was Lu Heng's fault. Originally, if His Majesty wanted to punish her, it would be Lu Heng's fault for plotting against the imperial mausoleum. The Lu family had already rebelled. What does blowing up the imperial mausoleum have to do with you? But he is very cunning. He dragged all the commoners in the county down with him to distract your Majesty's attention. This person is too despicable. Some of the commoners were shaken when they heard this. Some of them were still stubborn and didn't seem to be moved. There were even some people who were dissatisfied with Qin Yining's words. They said loudly, "You are a member of the imperial court. Of course, you speak for the imperial court. Your Majesty doesn't care about the lives of the commoners." He was willing to spend money to build the imperial mausoleum, but he was unwilling to give us food. Even if the imperial mausoleum was blown up, it wouldn't be pitiful for such an incapable ruler. But you are all innocent. Qin Yining frowned bitterly and said loudly, "You were dragged into something that had nothing to do with you. You were caught, but where's the person who dragged you into this?" He had long since escaped without a trace. He put gunpowder in the gun and let you light the fire. In the end, he was clean and relaxed. You are all honest people, but you were all used by him. The commoners looked at each other. They were all shaken. Look around. Are the people who were caught all the commoners, you know? How many rebels are there in the Liu family? They only left a small number of people here. The ones guarding the city gate are you, who are supposed to be protected. Qin Yining walked quickly toward the city gate. He pointed outside the city and said, "But do you know what you are guarding? You don't know that the Titan army is already outside the city. The Duke of Ding that you think is here to kill you is leading the soldiers you hate to fight a bloody battle. They're using their lives and blood to resist the Titan attack. Don't they have horses? Can't they escape? They can. But why didn't they run away? It's all for you commoners. Yet, all of you defended the city gates to the death and did not allow the soldiers who were protecting you to enter the city. Seeing that they had nowhere to retreat, they could only fight to the death with the Titan. Fellow villagers, do you think this is an act of benevolence? Everyone has been dutiful for generations. However, because of Liu Heng's lies, you were used by him to do such an unrighteous thing. You even got yourselves and your family involved in the rebellion. You don't care about your own lives, and you don't care about the evaluation of the people of Huichuan County. Don't tell me you don't care about the lives of your family members." There was complete silence in front of the city gate. Qin Yining's sonorous and forceful questioning was like the beating of a drum in their hearts. Originally, he was still a little angry, but now, only regret and despair were left. "Oui. A man opened his mouth with a gloomy face. "Princess, please show us a way out." The man fell to his knees with a thud. Since someone had taken the lead, those who didn't want to beg for mercy because of their reputation finally lost their psychological burden and knelt down one by one. Qin Yining had a very good reputation in Huichuan County during this period of time. Moreover, he had once acted benevolently under the pressure of Madame Liu. Furthermore, he had the good reputation that the Pang Shao had accumulated over the years. When these people calmed down and thought about this, they really felt regret and fear. They kept kowtowing nonstop. Qin Yining shook his head and said, "Everyone was deceived by words and committed treason. Wouldn't you be considered a traitor to the imperial court if you colluded with the rebels? Do you know how the imperial court deals with traitors? Kill them." Someone stammered. The scene was silent for a moment. Then, everyone started sobbing in despair. "No, we don't want to die." We were also muddle-headed for a moment. "Princess, please have mercy. Please have mercy." Everyone was finally afraid. They kept kowtowing and begging for mercy. Liu Weiguwei looked at the people who were still indignant when they were tied up on the city wall. Now, because of Qin Yining's words, they obediently confessed. When he came closer, he finally realized the power of the Prince Zhongshuan's consort. Liu Heng incited people to achieve his goal. The Prince Zhongshuan's consort also had the ability to do so. Liu Weiguwei's respect for Qin Yining increased a lot. He came to Qin Yining's side and bowed. He said in a low voice, "Princess, should we open the city gate now, or should we order people to go out and scout first?" Qin Yining looked back and smiled. "What does official Liu think?" Liu Weiguwei said seriously, "For safety's sake, this official thinks that we should scout first and get in touch with Duke Ding." Official Liu is right. Qin Yining nodded in agreement. "Let's do as you say." Liu Weiguwei agreed. His heart was especially warm. He guessed that Qin Yining might have thought the same. However, she gave him the opportunity to speak. This was equivalent to giving him the credit for quelling the rebellion and welcoming Duke Ding and his entourage into the city. Although a woman didn't have much use for this kind of credit, she didn't want to walk the path of an official, but she was willing to give him the credit. This was a great respect and recognition for him. Lu Weigui's heart was filled with gratitude and admiration. After Qin Yining arranged this matter for Lu Weigui, he looked at the common people. Everyone, stand up. If I wanted to kill you all, I would have done it on the city gate tower. Why would I waste so much effort to have you all come here to listen to me say this? Everyone is an ordinary person. This time, you all suffer an unexpected disaster. Everyone has old and young people in their families. I really can't bear to see you all being used without knowing it. The common people raised their heads and looked at Qin Yining. They hesitated and didn't dare to stand up. Qin Yining sighed. Everyone please stand up. I will do what I say. I will definitely protect you in front of Duke Ding. However, everyone has to be clear about the current situation. The Titan soldiers are now at the city gate. Duke Ding is stubbornly resisting. If the Titan people step into Huichuan County, everyone should think about the consequences. The common people finally calmed down and realized the seriousness of the matter. The leading man stomped his feet and lamented regretfully, "We were wrong. We were really muddle-headed. The Titan people are outside. Everyone has long heard about the lives of the common people at the border who have been deprived of grain by the Titan for years. How can we be so muddle-headed now? Could it be that Lu Heng has black magic?" Everyone was filled with regret. They wished they could beat their chests and stamp their feet. Qin Yining saw that more than half of his goal had been achieved, so he continued to work hard. For the sake of our families, Huichuan County must be defended. Your Majesty originally ordered Duke Ding to capture the rebels. Because it was to capture Lu Heng and a small group of people, he didn't send many soldiers. However, knowing that the Titan people have come here, Your Majesty will definitely arrange for reinforcements. Before the reinforcements arrive, please help Duke Ding and the soldiers of the Imperial Court. This is not only an opportunity for you to redeem yourselves, but also for the sake of your families. At this point, Qin Yining bent his knees and bowed. Everyone is so righteous. I thank you here. When had the common people ever seen a noble lady in the Imperial Court bow to an ordinary person? In addition, Qin Yining didn't point out their mistakes from the beginning to the end. He always understood that they had been bewitched and found a way for them to redeem themselves. Their gratitude to Qin Yining was even deeper. Everyone nodded and said loudly, "Princess, don't worry. We will definitely guard the city gate and not let the Titan take a step forward. Yes, we will definitely help Duke Ding guard the city gate." Not only the common people who were tied up in a row, but even the officials and soapmen, as well as the rest of the common people who heard the commotion, were also excited. They shouted loudly that they must guard the city gate and protect their homes. Once people were united, the power they formed was huge. Even if Jiziyu had 3 heads and 6 arms, it was difficult for him to prevent people from stabbing him in the back. Now, Qin Yining's impassioned speech had stirred up everyone's emotions. They didn't care who was the emperor and didn't care about the lives of the other people in the imperial court, but they could not care about their families. Even if they had to fight for their families, they definitely wouldn't be a burden to Jiziyu. Qin Yining nodded again and again. He was so moved that he shouted slogans angrily and cursed the Titan. At this time, there were sounds of fighting and killing outside the city gate. The guards at the city gate were ordered to open the city gate wide. The cavalry sent by the imperial court and the 3,000 soldiers and horses rushed and exhausted. The common people were stunned. Qin Yining hurriedly ordered, "Quickly untie everyone. Everyone, go and help. We must guard the city gate. We can't let a single Titan come in alive. Yes, we can't let the Titans come in and harm our common people. Old and young men, get your weapons." One by one, the strong men went to look for tools. Some found shovels, some took hoes, some took door bolts, and even the long iron ladles used at home for cooking. There were also some who were very smart and used the wooden pot lid as a shield. This group of common people looked like a motley crew, but in order to protect their homes, they showed even more fighting spirit than the imperial court's army. They all rushed up and went around Jiziu's troops to the city gate. They didn't want to let a single Titan enter the city. Jiziu was the same as Pang Xiao. When retreating from a battle, he had always been at the rear. He had never been the first to run. When he cut down a Titan cavalry approaching him with his sword, he turned around and rode his horse into the city, shouting, "Close the gate! Close the gate!" When he shouted, he saw the common people holding weapons. These common people saw Jiziu riding his horse into the city gate. They immediately used all their strength to push the heavy city gate open. Seeing the Tatar cavalry approaching, even though these farmers hadn't had a full meal for a long time, they were still so tired that they saw stars before their eyes. At this critical moment, they closed the city gates with a bang sound. Jiziu jumped off the back of his horse. He looked at the common people expressionlessly and with surprise in his eyes. The corners of his lips curled up slightly. Qin Yining and Lu Weigui quickly walked up to him. Lu Weigui cupped his hands and bowed. "I am Huichuan County Magistrate Lu Weigui. Greetings, Duke Ding." Qin Yining also bowed and said, "Greetings, Duke Ding." Chapter 1100. This was the first time Lu Weigui had come into close contact with Jiziu. Jiziu was a war godlike character on the same level as Prince Zhongshan. He was already worthy of respect. Adding on Jiziu's extremely handsome appearance and cold as ice noble temperament, it made people only feel reverence for him, without any other emotions. As such, Lu Weigui did not hide anything and respectfully described the situation in the city. When he talked about how Qin Yining resolved the crisis and made the people change their minds, his face was filled with respect and admiration. Jiziu nodded and smiled at Qin Yining. "Thank you for your hard work." Qin Yining said, "It's not hard work. I heard from young Master Mu about your situation outside the city, and I was really worried. Do you know the reason why the Tartars suddenly came?" Jiziu's expression froze for a moment, and he slowly let out a breath and said softly, "The Titan army launched an all-out war against the Zhou. Lu Heng worked with his old subordinates and led the Titan cavalry into the pass. The Dragon Legion's commander was turned against by Lu Heng and was trapped by the Titan in Skywolf Pass. More than half of their forces were lost. The Titan army took this chance to enter and occupied all the cities they passed." What? Jiziu's words made everyone feel despair. How many years had it been? The Northern Tianyu, Skywolf, Sky Pivot, and Sky Gate passes were like four barriers that were tightly guarded by Jiziu's Dragon Legion. When the Titan people talked about these four passes and Jiziu, how could they not feel fear? However, today, Jiziu's military power was taken away by your majesty, and he was idle at home. The Dragon Legion, which was originally a ferocious army, was handed over to an idiot. Moreover, he was a traitor. What a pity for the men of the Dragon Legion. They were Jiziu's painstaking training, and they were plotted against by Lu Heng just like that. Although Qin Yining guessed that Lu Heng might work with the Titan, he did not expect him to do this. Luring the Titan people to the Zhou was like inviting a wolf into the house. He was using the Titan people to deal with Li Qiqian, but did he not think about how he was going to drive the Titan people out in the future? Did he want the people of the Zhou to be enslaved by the Titan? Qin Yining gritted his teeth, and he was so angry that his teeth were itching. Lu Heng had committed a heinous crime by doing such a thing. For his own sake, he did not even consider the life and death of the people. If that's the case, won't Huichuan become the border between the Zhou and the Titan? Lu Weigui's worried voice pulled Qin Yining back to reality. Qin Yining also looked at Jiziu. Jiziu nodded. He held the horsewhip that Pang Xiao had given him and gestured for everyone to go up the city gate. The situation is indeed dangerous. Looking at the Titan soldiers gathered outside the city gate, Jiziu's voice was still calm. "Although it's dangerous, it's not to the point of desperation. I have already sent a letter to your majesty to request for more troops. It takes time to mobilize the troops from various places, so I'm afraid we can't count on it. However, other than the 5 armies, the 3,000 armies and the Divine Arms Army, there's also the Tiger Army." Looking back at Qin Yining and Lu Weigui, Jiziu's lips curled up slightly. The Tiger Army led by Wang Yi has a good chance of winning against the Titan. Qin Yining nodded and said confidently, everyone believes in Duke Ding's abilities. Fortunately, you are here. If it were someone else, the Titan would have already attacked. At that time, not only will the people in the city be in danger, but if Huichuan falls and the Titan attacks the capital, how will we deal with it? If that happened, Dezhou would really be destroyed by the Titan. Lu Weiguwei and the others nodded in agreement and looked at Jiziyu with admiration and dependence. Jiziyu thought for a moment and said, why don't I see young Master Mu? Young Master Mu went to the city to check on Lu Heng's whereabouts. However, I'm guessing that Lu Heng has already escaped. Jiziyu nodded and said, judging from the recent situation, he should have escaped. Looking at Qin Yining and thinking about Pang Zhao's situation in the capital, Jiziyu said, this is the place where the two armies are fighting. Princess, you are a woman, so you shouldn't stay here for long. You should take advantage of the fact that the situation is not critical and return to the capital first. Lu Weiguwei nodded in agreement. That's right, Princess. Now that Huichuan has become a battlefield, you will only put one more person in danger if you stay here. You should return to the capital. Qin Yining was a little hesitant. She was worried about the situation here and wanted to help. However, she knew her own weight. If she stayed here and encountered danger, she would have to trouble others to protect her. Now, the most sensible thing she could do was not to be a burden to Jiziyu. Qin Yining nodded and said, both of you are right. Let's do it this way. I will set off after I have reorganized everything. Jiziyu nodded expressionlessly, but in his heart, he was relieved. He knew how much Pang Zhao valued Qin Yining. If something happened to Qin Yining under his watch, how sad would Pang Zhao be? He was afraid that they would no longer be brothers in the future. I will arrange for someone to escort you out of the city. Qin Yining smiled and said, there is no need to trouble yourself. I have enough people around me. It won't be difficult to sneak out with me. As they were talking, they saw Mu Jinghu walking briskly up the city gate tower. When he saw Jiziyu, Mu Jinghu cupped his hands and said bluntly, Lu Heng left the city 2 days ago. The rebels in the city have been arrested one after another, but there could be many hiding among the civilians. If you want to be safe, you have to be careful. Jiziyu returned the greeting and nodded. Thank you for the information. Mu Jinghu waved his hand. It's okay, Qin Yining said. Then I will go and prepare the luggage. Jiziyu and Lu Weiguwei both nodded. Qin Yining bowed to the two of them again and quickly led his men down the city gate tower. Mu Jinghu followed behind Qin Yining and said in a low voice, Lu Heng has escaped. What do you plan to do? I can't think of a good idea at the moment. Qin Yining sighed and said, until now, I still don't understand why Lu Heng would end up like this. He wasn't such a person in the first place. Lu Heng might be able to achieve his goals one day for power, wealth, and to make himself stronger, but he had to pay a high price. This included his magnanimous heart, as well as his image in Qin Yining's heart. The group of people returned to the Yamen without encountering any danger on the way. However, Qin Yining knew that there was a huge hidden danger in this city. He didn't know how Jiziyu would deal with it completely. When they reached the side room, Ji Yun and the others went to pack their things while Qin Yining whispered to Mu Jinghu. Young Master Mu, logically speaking, I shouldn't talk too much. However, I can see that you're not in a good mood. If there's anything bothering you, just tell us. Wang Yi and I will definitely do our best to help you. Mu Jinghu was silent, but his eyes were full of emotions. He and Qin Yining were old acquaintances. Back then, before she and Pang Zhao were married, he had been by her side as a bodyguard. Over the years, he had witnessed her relationship with Pang Zhao with his own eyes. He knew her character and trusted her. Forget it. Mu Jinghu's voice was weak. He sighed and said, there's no harm in telling you. That woman and I are completely done for. I don't want to see her again in this life. Qin Yining frowned. Seeing Mu Jinghu so angry and dejected, he deliberated over his words and said, could there be some misunderstanding? I can see that Boss Chio's feelings for you are real. She even gave birth to Yin Ji for you. A woman is willing to give birth to a man's child. Even if there's some misunderstanding between husband and wife, you should be more open-minded. Mu Jinghu shook his head. You don't know. We've all been used by that woman. She's so cunning and sinister. She has all of us in her calculations, including this time when she was sick. She deliberately pretended to be sick in order to lure me out of the capital. Qin Yining was speechless. What's going on? Mu Jinghu said, think about the relationship between the Qiu family, a reclusive family, and the Lu family, a prominent family, and you'll understand. Qin Yining was smart. Since he had already reminded her, he had a vague guess in his heart. Without waiting for her to speak, Mu Jinghu said angrily, in the beginning, she tried to rope in Jishi so that she could use Jishi to deal with her uncle and take back everything she had in the Qiu family. Now that Lu Heng has fallen and the Lu family has been dealt with by Your Majesty, it shows that the aristocratic families have been dealt a devastating blow. It's time for the reclusive families to appear on the stage. I'm afraid that many of the officials in the imperial court are related to the Qiu family. This woman's ambition and desire for power are simply amazing. In the past, we had the same goal, which was to deal with the Lu family together. That's why she did her best for us. But now that the Qiu family has planted someone to be an official in the imperial court, it means that she has joined Your Majesty's faction. Qin Yining nodded and sighed softly. Li Qitian was the son of heaven. Only when the son of heaven made arrangements, the officials in the imperial court could sit firmly in their positions. Therefore, their previous common interest with Qiu Feishan had collapsed after the Lu family was destroyed. Now, the person who shared the same interest with Qiu Feishan had become Li Qitian. When they could destroy Lu Heng and settle the Taitan incident, all of Qiu Feishan's wrongdoings would be completely fulfilled. Tell me, how did her grandfather, who loved her the most, die? Mu Jinghu sneered. You speak as if she's a filial granddaughter, saying that she wants to take revenge and do something. Who knew that now that the benefits are in front of her, she would even shake hands and make peace with the person who killed her grandfather? Qin Yining was even more surprised. You're saying that Boss Qiu and Qiu Yuanqing have reconciled? Yes. Mu Jinghu gritted his teeth and said, this woman is simply too sinister. She has a strong desire for control and is unwilling to listen to other people's suggestions and ideas. She felt that it was dangerous for me to stay in the capital, so she lied to me to come out. She even pretended to be sick and let Bing Tang do a lot of useless work. Now that her goal has been achieved, she naturally wouldn't care about what I think. Chapter 1101. The room fell into a strange silence for a moment. Mu Jinghu slumped into a chair. Qin Yining did not know how to comfort him. Mu Jinghu was not someone who would casually slander others. Since he said so, it meant that this matter really happened. She had previously received a letter from Bing Tang saying that Qiu Feishan's condition was strange. Now it seemed that if she was faking it, Bing Tang would not be able to diagnose it, but she insisted on having a headache. Bing Tang would naturally not know the reason and could only attribute it to a strange illness. Qin Yining felt that there were two reasons for this delay in Mu Jinghu's progress. Firstly, Qiu Feishan did not want Mu Jinghu to be involved in Pang Zhao's matter. Secondly, it might be for the sake of Mu Jinghu's safety. Qiu Feishan was extraordinarily intelligent, and her wisdom and methods were top-notch. She was willing to think of these for her husband, but it did not mean that she was completely heartless towards Mu Jinghu. Unfortunately, Qiu Feishan had miscalculated Mu Jinghu's reaction. She did not expect Mu Jinghu to value loyalty so much that he would rather choose to be a loyal brother and keep his promise than to side with Qiu Feishan just because she was the mother of his son. Thinking about Mu Jinghu's actions, Qiu Feishan also did not expect that he would run away because of her. She would be upset and bitterly disappointed. Qin Yining opened her mouth. Facing a woman who had schemed against her and Pang Zhao, it was impossible for Qin Yining to treat her the same as before. But if it was said that she hated Qiu Feishan, then she did not. It was just that their standpoints were different. Although she did not agree with her, she could understand why she would do such a thing. They would not work together in the future. It was just that Mu Jinghu was pitiful. He had chosen his own wife and did not hesitate to snatch her away, to negotiate terms and conditions to marry her. He must be very fond of Qiu Feishan. But the woman he loved deceived him and even used him. He was not a man who refused to take responsibility, and Qiu Feishan gave birth to Brother Yin. This was really a bad debt that couldn't be settled clearly. Qin Yining shook his head and heaved a long sigh. Young Master Mu, the matter between me and Zhishi has implicated you. If it weren't for this, you and Boss Qiu could be an ordinary couple and live a stable life. Mu Jinghu smiled bitterly and shook his head. You don't have to comfort me. I know her character all too well. She is not the kind of person who will live a stable life. Even if you and Zhishi's matter did not happen, her character would not change. She would still look for trouble and cause trouble. If I want her to follow me back to Tianji Valley to live a peaceful life, I'm afraid she'll suffocate to death. Qin Yining was speechless. I don't want to bother with her anymore. The more Mu Jinghu thought about it, the angrier he got. He slammed the small table heavily, and the teacups on top of it clanked. Seeing him throw a tantrum like this, Qin Yining couldn't help but sigh. Mu Jinghu wasn't a particularly complicated person. He would act according to his own set of principles and act according to his heart. He was hurt by Qiu Feishan's actions. Otherwise, he would not talk about his wife like this in front of her. All right, don't be angry. After all, she is Brother Yan's biological mother. Brother Yan is your eldest son. He is innocent. Although you are angry, Brother Yan, you still have to think about it. Mu Jinghu heard this and grabbed his hair in pain. He was obviously confused to the extreme. Qin Yining did not know whether to continue persuading him, because it was the first time she saw Mu Jinghu showing such an expression. She felt bad in her heart too. After all, she regarded Qiu Feishan as her ally. I will never trust her again. After a long time, Mu Jinghu said in a dry voice, I don't care about a rich life. What I care about is her feelings for me. She has been deceiving me and using me from the beginning to the end. This is the most unacceptable thing for me. I also know that Brother Yin is innocent. After I am done with the things here, I will bring Brother Yin to my side and teach him well. In the future, Qiu Feishan and I will have nothing to do with each other. She will go her own way, and I will go mine. Even if I bring Brother Yin to live a poor life, that is the life that we should live. Qin Yining heard this and knew that Mu Jinghu was angry at this time. He was disheartened and did not know how to persuade him. He could only comfort him and said, Don't be stubborn. Just deal with it calmly. No matter what, with Zhishi and I around, you and Brother Yin will have a home to return to. Mu Jinghu heard this and raised his head to look at Qin Yining's sincere eyes. After a long time, he nodded. Soon, Jingzhe and the others packed their luggage. Jiziyu also came to find them. You should leave as soon as possible. While the Taitan people are reorganizing and have no time to care so much, I will lead people to protect you and leave. Qin Yining shook his head and said worriedly, It will be easy for us to escape, but it will not be easy for you to continue to stay here. The people in the city do not have much food to begin with. You will have to stay here for a long time. The food that the people and horses eat will cost a lot. Jiziyu did not finish his words, but he understood Qin Yining's worries. The state treasury has been tight for more than a day or two. Your Majesty's money was used to repair the imperial mausoleum, and almost all of it was used up. Now that the world is facing a disaster, the people have lost their homes, and there are people in various prefectures who have started an uprising due to hunger. Before these riots can be suppressed, the Taitan people have taken advantage of the situation to invade. It was not that Li Qitian did not want to send food to Jiziyu, but that he himself was stretched too thin. Don't worry, I will find a way. Jiziyu did not say much. He raised his eyebrows confidently and ordered people to go out of the city to create a diversion. Qin Yining bid farewell to Lu Weigui and boarded the horse carriage. He led Jingzhe, Liao Zhibing, and the others to follow Jiziyu and break out of the encirclement. The Taitan people were tired from the long-distance raid. In addition, they had just prepared to set up camp, and their defense was still very weak. Jiziyu's people caught them off guard. During the battle, Qin Yining's group chose an inconspicuous path and quickly escaped. The sounds of fighting and killing gradually faded away. Qin Yining anxiously lifted the curtain of the horse carriage and looked back. He only saw two groups of people fighting. Jiziu's group was fighting and retreating towards the city gate. There were people in the city who opened the city gate and came out to support them. Qin Yining sighed. "We are leaving, but Duke Ding will have to clean up the mess here. This is not your fault. The fault lies in the fact that the Taitan took advantage of the situation. Moreover, your majesty is muddle-headed. If he had been a little bit more thoughtful, he would not be completely helpless at this time." Ji-yun's voice became louder and louder as he spoke. Liao Zhibing, Meng Qin, and the others who were following the horse carriage felt their blood boil and began to discuss with him. Mu Jinghu urged his horse to follow beside the group. His face was sullen, and he did not say a word. Qin Yining lifted the curtain of the horse carriage and looked at Mu Jinghu. He could not help but sigh again. Because they were in a hurry and the capital was not far from here, Qin Yining's group camped outside for 2 nights and soon arrived at the capital. However, the scene in front of them made them even more shocked and powerless. There was a vast open space in front of him, with disaster victims lying or sitting all over the place. There were even women who were as thin as bones. Their cheeks were sunken, and they did not forget to gently rock a child in their arms. There were disaster victims everywhere in the large open space in front of the city gate. There were even people arranged by the city to constantly patrol the area where the disaster victims were staying. Once they found a disaster victim who had already passed away, they would forcibly take him away, cremate his body, and bury him in the ground, regardless of the wishes of his family. Qin Yining naturally knew that these people were doing the right thing. In the face of a disaster, preventing the epidemic was the most important thing. No one would care about the feelings and tears of a few people. However, such a tragic scene had already spread to the capital. It still made people's hearts turn cold. "Wang Fei, let's..." Ji Yun's throat was dry. He coughed a few times before he found his voice. "Let's go into the city now." Nodding, Qin Yining pursed his lips and frowned as he sat in the horse carriage. He did not dare to look at the tragic scene outside. The city gate was tightly shut. The carriages that came and went were carefully checked. However, Qin Yining had returned to the capital, and he had a road permit. Naturally, he was respectfully allowed to enter. As soon as he entered the city gate, he saw that the streets were still clean and tidy. It was as if the thick city walls separated the inside and outside into 2 different worlds. There was no longer that tragic scene. Qin Yining could not help but sigh in relief. Ji Yun sighed and said, "How good would it be if the whole world was like this?" Qin Yining was silent. Everyone outside the horse carriage was also silent. After a long time, Qin Yining asked Mu Jinghu outside the horse carriage, "Wang Yi is currently in this Wangfu?" "Yes." Mu Jinghu said, "His injuries are not light. He has not attended court for a long time. He is currently recuperating in the Wangfu." Qin Yining nodded. Thinking of Pang Zhao's injuries, he became even more anxious. He lifted the curtain of the horse carriage and urged, "Let's hurry. Once we reach the Wangfu, everyone can have a good rest." Temporarily putting aside the troubles outside, seeing that they were about to reach home, everyone's mood finally relaxed. Very quickly, the group arrived in front of the Yusi Wangfu. The doorman was a trusted aide arranged by Pang Zhao. When he saw Qin Yining's horse carriage approaching, he became alert. But when he saw the person beside the horse carriage, he immediately beamed with joy and told inside, "Quickly go inside and tell them that the princess consort has returned." He then went forward to greet them. Qin Yining smiled as he lifted the curtain of the horse carriage. "You may dispense with the formalities. How is the Wangfu? Has anyone come to visit Wang Yi recently?" The doorman smiled and said, "Princess consort, do not worry. Wang Yi's injuries are improving." He did not mention anything about the visit. Qin Yining had an idea in his heart. Qin Yining alighted from the horse carriage and entered the Wangfu with everyone else. Someone had already prepared a roller coaster. Qin Yining had just sat down when he heard the sound of footsteps coming from the Wangfu. The one running in front was Bing Tang, whom he had not seen in a long time. Beside her were 2 servant girls, Zi Yuan and Han Xiao. When Jian saw Bingtang, she first burst into laughter. Girl, why does your face look rounder after going to the south? Could it be that your days have been too comfortable? It can be seen that Huzi has protected your group well. Bingtang's face immediately turned red. She spat at Ji-yun. You only know how to talk nonsense and bully me. Princess consort, aren't you going to make a decision for me? Make a decision for what? When did I bully you? Ji-yun said with a smile. Qin Yining could not help but laugh. He nodded and said, make a decision, make a decision. Both of your people by my side. Naturally, I have to make a decision for both of you. Both of you are already old. You should have been released to get married a long time ago. In the future, it will be very good to return to my side as steward wives. This time, not only did Bingtang's face turn red, but Ji-yun's face also turned red. The two of them shyly called out, Princess consort. Everyone laughed for a moment, sweeping away the haze of emotions from the return journey. Chapter 1102. Bingtang smiled bitterly. This servant has asked the doctor who treated Wang Yi. The external injuries seem to be very serious. Otherwise, with Wang Yi's strong personality, he wouldn't have been lying there for so long without moving. Seeing Qin Yining's frown, Bingtang hurriedly comforted her. But don't worry, Wang Yi's body is strong and healthy. He's at the age where his recovery ability is the best. We've already applied the best medicine, and the external injuries will heal very quickly. This servant has also checked Wang Yi's pulse, and there are no major problems. Qin Yining heard this and felt slightly better. He nodded and said, I understand. Is Wang Yi in the inner residence right now? Yes. Everyone clustered around Qin Yining as they walked towards the inner residence. Pang Xiao had already changed his clothes, washed his face, and shaved his stubble. He knew that Qin Yining would be back soon. To prevent her from worrying, he deliberately changed his posture and leaned sideways on the soft couch. This was more dignified than lying on his stomach. Qin Yining's group of footsteps approached. When Pang Xiao heard them, he knew that she had returned. His heart thumped violently. This kind of joy and throbbing was still the same as it was in the past. His precious treasure was finally back. Qin Yining hurriedly entered the room. She walked around the copper, three-legged incense burner that was placed in the outer room. She passed through the antique floor-to-ceiling covers and entered the inner room. She saw Pang Xiao sitting on the soft couch with a book in his hand and looking at her. His hair was tied up in a high bun, revealing his handsome face. His white clothes made his face look like it was carved from fine white jade. His fingers holding the book were long and slender, and his joints were well-defined. It perfectly explained what elegance was, especially when he looked at Qin Yining. His eyes were filled with a warm smile, as if he had seen his most precious treasure. Qin Yining met his eyes and couldn't help but smile. She quickly walked to the soft couch and sat down. She looked at him hesitantly. Jishi, are your injuries better? I'm much better now. Pang Xiao opened his arms and pulled her into his embrace. Upon seeing this, Ji-yun and the others quickly retreated and carefully closed the door. The group of people stood guard in front of the courtyard door from afar. Qin Yining rested his head on Pang Xiao's shoulder and wrapped his arms around Pang Xiao's thin waist. He breathed in Pang Xiao's familiar and elegant scent. Pang Xiao's tired heart was finally at ease. He couldn't help but close his eyes and breathe in relief. How's your injury? It's best if you lie on your stomach. Sitting like this won't help your recovery. Pang Xiao kissed her forehead several times and said in a low and gentle voice, I'm fine. It was just a superficial wound. He had suffered so many injuries over the years, so why would he care about this? However, you refused to stay outside the city and went to Huichuan County. You should be punished severely. Qin Yining blushed and remained silent. Pang Xiao knew that she went to Huichuan County and encountered Lu Heng's rebellion. He blew up the imperial mausoleum and lured the Titan to Huichuan County. He was so scared that his soul almost flew out of his body. He could only blame his injury for affecting him and preventing him from rescuing her personally. Ever since Mu Jinghu rushed to Huichuan County, he hadn't had a good night's sleep. Even in his dreams, he dreamed that Qin Yining was captured by the Titan or that she was kidnapped by Lu Heng, or that she was injured by a stray arrow during the siege. In the end, he didn't think of anything good. Pang Xiao heaved a long sigh of relief when she finally came back safe and sound and stayed peacefully in his bosom. He bit her neck and slapped her buttocks as punishment when she shrank her neck to avoid the itch. Let's see if you can still run around like this in the future. You encountered such a dangerous situation when you went out. You made me worry to death. Qin Yining knew that he was worried about her. Her heart warmed as if she had drunk a bowl of hot soup in the winter. Her limbs and bones felt warm and comfortable. She hugged his neck and smiled. You're so worried about me and haven't come to find me personally. It's obvious that you're seriously injured this time. Lie down and let me see your wound. Pang Xiao hurriedly pushed her hand away. It's almost healed. I'm still applying medicine. What's there to see? Let me take a look so that I can be at ease. Why are you in such a hurry to see my place? Pang Xiao pulled Qin Yining's hand shamelessly. Qin Yining's face turned red when she heard this. She glared at him and said, Don't try to get away with it. Let me take a look. She pulled Pang Xiao to turn over and lifted Pang Xiao's clothes. Pang Xiao knew that Qin Yining was stubborn. When she heard that he had been beaten up, she went to Huichuan County to do such a big thing. He had no choice but to let her take a look. He had no choice but to lie down obediently. However, he continued to tease her. Forget it. Since my beloved wife has made such a request, it's not good for me to keep refusing. Qin Yining really wanted to slap his buttocks. She wanted to see if this person still had the energy to talk nonsense. However, when she saw the red and swollen injury from his buttocks to his thighs that had not yet healed, her heart tightened. The flesh was about to be smashed. Her fingertips trembled as they hovered above the wound. For a long time, she did not dare to touch it. How do you feel? Does it still hurt badly? Did you hurt your muscles and bones? When Pang Xiao heard her voice, he felt that something was wrong. He quickly pulled up his pants and turned over, pulling her into his arms. Qin Yining was already full of tears. Clear tears slid down her cheeks. Her eyes were red like a little rabbit that had been bullied and hated. Pang Xiao's heart was about to melt. He quickly hugged her in his arms and kissed her again and again. It's okay. Look, I'm fine now. My injuries are only superficial. The people who beat me up have always known my reputation. They didn't really dare to do anything to me. If you don't believe me, you can ask the doctor. You can also ask Bing Tang. I'll see if I'm lying to you. When Qin Yining saw him like this, and Bing Tang told her about Pang Xiao's situation, she believed his words. However, how could a person as proud as Pang Xiao be beaten by Li Qitian in front of all the civil and military officials in the imperial court? The more Qin Yining thought about it, the more distressed she felt for him. The more she thought about it, the more aggrieved she felt. She could not help but cry. Pang Xiao's heart ached even more. He hugged her and gently shook her body, coaxing her like a child. It's okay, Sister E. Don't cry. Don't be sad. Look, I'm all better now. Qin Yining shook her head. He humiliated you too much. I must make him pay the most painful price. Pang Xiao saw that her eyes were bright from crying. Her nose and lips were red. His heart softened. Okay. I'll help you, okay? Don't be angry. Be good. Qin Yining leaned on Pang Xiao's shoulder. After a while, she calmed down and realized that she had lost her composure. She could not help but blush. She quickly avoided his embrace and lowered her head to wipe away her tears. When Pang Xiao saw Qin Yining being so shy, he was both happy and distressed. He scratched her nose in amusement. Okay, you're crying on purpose to make my heart ache so that I won't punish you for going to Huichuan without permission. I didn't do that. Qin Yining rolled her eyes at him. Her nasal voice was strong, and Pang Xiao liked it. Okay. You're right. But you can't do this again in the future. Think about it. If I went straight into danger without saying anything, wouldn't you be worried? Baby, do you know how important you are to me? If anything happened to you, I don't know what I've done for my whole life. Qin Yining was moved. Pang Xiao was right. If she put herself in his shoes, how could she not be worried? If Pang Xiao went into danger without saying anything, she would be so worried that she would not be able to eat or sleep at night. Qin Yining sniffed and said, I know. I won't do it again in the future. Good girl. Pang Xiao kissed Qin Yining's forehead. Qin Yining took off his outer shirt and accompanied Pang Xiao to rest on the soft couch. The two of them lay on one side and chatted from time to time. Most of the time, they talked about trivial family matters. In such a relaxed situation, Qin Yining naturally fell asleep very quickly. Pang Xiao raised a hand and gently brushed aside the loose strands of hair that fell in front of her. He looked at her quiet, sleeping face in a daze. They had been separated for so long. She must have suffered a lot outside, especially now that there were internal and external troubles. It was not peaceful everywhere. She might even starve. Pang Xiao's brows furrowed even tighter. He was now a tall tree that attracted the wind. Naturally, many people were watching him. In the future, he could not guarantee Qin Yining's absolute safety. He was also afraid that someone would suddenly stab him in the back. Qin Yining was also wholeheartedly thinking about him. He was really worried that if something happened in the future, she would disregard her own safety and wholeheartedly only think about him. It seemed that the only way to protect her was to make himself stronger. There were some things that had to be done even if he was against it in his heart. For example, that position. Pang Xiao and Qin Yining slept quietly for the entire day. The servants standing guard outside could not hear any other sound from inside and did not see anyone calling for them. They knew that Wang Fei and Wang Yu were resting. Ji Yun sighed in relief. After bidding farewell to Bing Tang, Ziyuan, and the others, she also went to bathe and rest. Qin Yining slept until the moon was high in the sky. She and Pang Xiao each ate a simple bowl of porridge. After washing up, they moved to the bed to sleep. Returning to Pang Xiao's side, Qin Yining was very happy. This was the first good sleep in recent days. Pang Xiao was the same. With Qin Yining by his side, he also had the most peaceful sleep in recent days. The next morning, the sunlight shone through the curtains into the bed and gently fell on Qin Yining's face. Pang Xiao opened his eyes and saw her lying on her side next to him. Her face was very close, and her white face was red from sleep. Pang Xiao couldn't help but curve the corners of his lips. He looked at her gently and was reluctant to wake her up. When Qin Yining woke up, it was already late in the morning. As soon as she opened her eyes, she met Pang Xiao's smiling eyes. She couldn't help but smile as well. You're awake? Her voice carried the tenderness of waking up. Pang Xiao smiled and said, I got up early. Seeing that you were sleeping soundly, I didn't wake you up. As he spoke, he leaned closer to Qin Yining and pecked her on the lips. Qin Yining covered her lips with the back of her hand and was a little embarrassed. I just opened my eyes. I haven't wiped my teeth and washed my face yet. What are you afraid of? Don't tell me you dislike me? Pang Xiao teased. Yuan and the others, who were waiting outside, heard the movements in the room and went to prepare hot water. Chapter 11:03. When Bing Tang and Ji Yun heard the sound, they immediately responded and quietly entered the door with hot water, green salt, and other things. Qin Yining sat up and yawned lazily. It's better to be home. I haven't slept so well for a long time. Pang Xiao smiled and was still lying on the bed. He tilted his head and looked at her. She was wearing soft-soled embroidered shoes and washing and changing clothes with the help of the maidservants. Ziyuan wanted to help Pang Xiao get up, but Pang Xiao waved his hand, and the maidservants didn't dare to come forward. Qin Yining sat in front of the dressing table with rouge on her ring finger. She saw Pang Xiao's movements in the mirror and said with a smile, I'll help you wash and comb your hair later. That's good, but I'm sorry to trouble you to serve me. Pang Xiao tilted his head and looked at Qin Yining dressing. She was wearing a light green robe, and her long black hair was scattered behind her. Ji Yun and Bing Tang were carefully combing her hair. Her dressing table had always been in the bedroom, but Pang Xiao hadn't seen this peaceful scene for a long time. His heart was soft and warm. He really hoped that it could continue like this in the future. Qin Yining smiled and rolled her eyes at him. She looked at the mirror and carefully put on her lipstick. She said occasionally, Did I not pay attention to you before? Pang Xiao couldn't help but laugh when he saw her delicate and charming appearance. Qin Yining finished combing his hair. She knew that Pang Xiao wouldn't want the maidservants around him to see his injuries, so she asked them to leave. She brought medicine and changed Pang Xiao's dressing. Then she brought hot water to help him wash. Finally, she took a wooden comb and carefully combed his hair. Pang Xiao was sitting sideways, and Qin Yining was standing facing him. This angle was very convenient for him to put his hands around her waist. Pang Xiao couldn't help but frown. "Why did you lose so much weight?" Qin Yining smiled. "I walked a lot outside, so I naturally lost some weight. However, I feel that my body is recovering very well. It's much better than when I gave birth to Zhao Gu'er and Han Gu'er. You've been working too hard." Pang Xiao sighed. Qin Yining didn't want Pang Xiao to think too much, so she said, "Young Master Mu told you everything?" "He told me as soon as he came back," Pang Xiao said with some regret. Actually, Blockhead really has feelings for his wife. It's just that when they were in the first year of junior high, I was actually a bit worried, because in comparison, Blockhead was much more innocent. He also had pretty good martial arts, and he was also my good friend, so the possibility of him being used was very high. Now it seems that I wasn't a petty person. Qin Yining used a jade hairpin to fix his hair, and then picked up a strand of hair that had fallen on his shoulder. She sat down next to him and said, "We only heard young Master Mu's side of the story. Perhaps things weren't as he saw and understood, but Boss Chio really did do something to hurt him, which is why he didn't care about his son. I think that since this matter was caused by us, we should at least help the couple." Pang Xiao said, "Even if we were involved, that woman Xiao Feishan can't be underestimated. Her scheming is too deep. Her many years of ups and downs in the business world have caused her methods to become increasingly ruthless. Perhaps her views are different from ours. Perhaps she can't understand Mu's feelings. This is why there is a saying since ancient times that people who walk different paths cannot make plans together. If you want to use your own views to persuade another person to agree with you, unless the other person sees clearly what happened to them, the consequences of just relying on your mouth is very likely to be unpleasant. Husband and wife are more sensitive to each other, so they have more requirements for each other." Boss Chio's approach touched young Master Mu's bottom line and made him feel disappointed and unfamiliar. It is unlikely to change his views in a short period of time. Qin Yining said helplessly and sighed. "Although I don't agree with Boss Chio's approach, I don't like this person very much right now. But they are husband and wife, and they even have children. Seeing them like this, I can't bear to see them like this." Pang Xiao nodded. "I will try my best to persuade him. But right now, the court is in a state of panic. The matter of the refugees hasn't been resolved, and the Taitan is attacking Huichuan County. Once the city is breached, the capital will be in danger. The world is already in chaos. I want to see what your majesty has to deal with it." Qin Yining lowered his eyes, and his long eyelashes fluttered. He was clearly angry. After a long time, he said, "Since we came back from Danfu County, he has not been kind to you. He has been beaten twice. Not to mention ourselves, even outsiders would be bitterly disappointed if they saw it. Now that the Taitan is attacking, if he wants to send you to meet the enemy, he will be wrong. I will not let this matter go." In Pang Xiao's eyes, she was like a small beast baring its fangs and brandishing its claws. She was trying to protect him, and it really made him feel touched. "Well, I am fine now. Besides, you are not willing to let this matter go. How do you want to deal with him?" Qin Yining sneered. "I can't talk about dealing with him. He is the emperor. How can I deal with him? But one day, I will let him have a taste of being humiliated in public." Qin Yining was still holding a grudge. Pang Xiao was held on the throne and beaten with a plank. With his pride and the image he had built up over the years, Li Qitian had trampled on his dignity to this extent. Qin Yining would definitely not let this matter go. Pang Xiao suddenly felt like he was being protected. She was clearly a weak woman, but she always gave him the feeling that they could support each other and rely on each other. Pang Xiao had not felt this kind of feeling from anyone else for a long time. This was because no matter if it was his family or his subordinates, they all relied on him. There was no one he could rely on. Pang Xiao held her hand and rubbed the back of her hand with his thumb. He smiled and said, "Well, Whether I can vent this anger or not depends on our sistery. Qin Yining's face flushed when he said this. She glared at him and said, "You only know how to sweet talk." The two of them had a simple breakfast and continued to stay in the room to read and chat. They talked about the current situation and how Zhou should deal with the current crisis. However, just after lunch, Qin Yining and Pang Xiao were about to take a nap. Bing Tang came to the door and said anxiously, "Wang Yi, princess consort, there's a guest outside." "A guest?" Qin Yining asked in confusion. "Who is it? Why are you so anxious?" Bing Tang said, "It's Boss Chiu. Now, Mr. Mu has gone to the front hall." Qin Yining's heart skipped a beat. He looked at Pang Xiao inquiringly. Pang Xiao seemed to know what Qin Yining was worried about. He patted her hand with a smile and said, "Don't worry. Blockhead is not so angry that he will kill his son's mother. However, with a straightforward personality, he would definitely not be nice to Qiu Feishan." Qiu Feishan's arrival was not a trivial matter. Although Pang Xiao was injured, he still had to see her. It was not convenient to let her come to the inner room because men and women were different. Qin Yining ordered people to prepare a wooden wheelchair. He asked Huzi and Tang Xiu to help Pang Xiao sit on it. Under Pang Xiao's reluctant and awkward gaze, they pushed the wheelchair all the way to the front hall. As soon as Qin Yining entered the door, he saw Qiu Feishan, who was dressed like a scholar, wearing a sky blue robe. Her hair was tied up in a bun. It was the same as when they first met. Qiu Feishan had returned to her usual dressing habits. Although she did not deliberately dress as a man, when she wore men's clothes, she did not seem to be deliberately stiff or pretentious. On the contrary, even if she was a woman, wearing men's clothes was natural and elegant. Mu Jinghu was dressed in a gray cotton robe. He stood at the door with his hands behind his back. It was as if he was from a different world from Qiu Feishan, who was dressed in silk. Perhaps she heard the voices of Qin Yining and Pang Xiao. Qiu Feishan stood up with the help of her maid being. She smiled and said, "I heard that Wang Yi was injured. It seems that the injury is not light. Is Wang Ye's body better?" Pang Xiao was pushed to the main seat by Tang Xiu and Huzi. Although the injury on his hip made him uncomfortable, it was better than walking all the way here. Pang Xiao was a very patient person. At this time, his face was normal. He did not see anything wrong. He only smiled and said, "This king's body is well. Boss Chiu's body is also well." Qiu Feishan repeatedly claimed to be sick. Even Bing Tang went to see her for a period of time. Everyone knew that she was faking it. Pang Xiao took this opportunity to mention this. No one knew what he meant. Qiu Feishan narrowed her eyes. Then she smiled and said, "It's already well. Thank you, Wang Yi, for your concern." She turned to Qin Yining and bowed. "Greetings to Princess." Qin Yining sat down next to Pang Xiao. He only raised his hand, no need for formalities. That cold attitude made Qiu Feishan stunned. Looking at Mu Jinghu's expression, she understood. She could not continue with the afterglow. She could only go straight to the point. After everyone was seated, Qiu Feishan bluntly said, "Presumably, my husband has already told His Highness and Her Highness. No matter how many reasons there were, the result was that I hid some private messages. I also caused the princess's Bing Tang girl to be so busy. I really feel bad." Bing Tang, who was standing behind Qin Yining, rolled her eyes impolitely. Qin Yining only smiled and did not say anything. If it was an ordinary girl, she would have been too ashamed to show her face in this situation. But Qiu Feishan was still calm. She smiled and said, "It seems that Princess is forgiving me." Qin Yining did not want to pay attention to her thick skin. Qiu Feishan then said, "In fact, official business is official business, and family matters are family matters. It's just like when His Highness and Pan and still had some enmity from the previous generation, but those were all state affairs. In the end, His Highness still married Princess Song, and this is a family matter. I didn't mean it that way. My husband and I have a deep relationship. Yinji is already so old. He will not be disloyal to my husband. Even if my husband does not approve of my thoughts, it will not erase my position." Mu Jinghu stared at Qiu Feishan. His eyes were full of anger. Qiu Feishan sighed. My relationship with you will not change in this life. Wang Yi and I can cooperate now because we have the same goal. There is no conflict. Chapter 1104. Qiu Feishan naturally knew that Pang Xiao was not easy to get along with, but she still felt a little embarrassed when she said those sarcastic words so straightforwardly. Qiu Feishan suppressed the unhappiness in her heart and said, Wang Yi is really busy. How can you forget such an important matter? It doesn't matter if it's not important. Let's forget about what we did in the past for the time being. We're here for the future. Several people were silent. In such an awkward atmosphere, Mu Jinghu even wanted to directly block Qiu Feishan's mouth and throw her out. Qiu Feishan did not care at all and continued. Now that Lu Hong has colluded with the Taitan to attack Dezhou, Huichuan County is so close to the capital. If it falls, I'm afraid that the capital will not be able to react in time. At that time, won't the people be in a terrible situation? Although Duke Dinghua is a fierce general and has the experience of defeating the Taitan, he was well prepared at that time, and the situation is far from comparable to the current situation. Pang Xiao was not moved at all and asked with a faint expression, If you have something to say, just say it. Why beat around the bush? Qiu Feishan did not care about his attitude and smiled slightly. Well, in that case, I'll just say it. Regardless of other things, the cooperation between Wang Yi and I in the past can be said to be pleasant. I hope to continue to cooperate with Wang Yi. As long as Wang Yi is willing to agree to go to war, expel the Taitan, and eliminate Lu Hong, then I'm willing to privately make up for the military provisions that the imperial court can't provide. At this point, Qiu Feishan stood up. Her voice was full of loyalty, and her tone was very passionate. The imperial court can't take out the money for disaster relief, let alone the money to repel the Taitan. When the people are in danger, what do they hope for the most? If Wang Yi descends at this time and removes the foreign threat, not to mention other things, the reputation of the god of war Wang Yi will be even greater than before. Taking a few steps closer, Qiu Feishan cupped her hands. I know that Wang Yi is a great hero with a shrewd mind, so he naturally understands what to say at what time. This is killing two birds with one stone. This is a win-win situation for both of us. What reason does Wang Yi have to refuse? Mu Jinghu clenched his fist behind his back so tightly that his knuckles cracked. This unscrupulous woman, who took advantage of the national crisis to negotiate with Pang Xiao, was actually his son's mother. Mu Jinghu wished he could strangle her to death. Qiu Feishan confidently waited for Pang Xiao's reply. She believed that with Pang Xiao's intelligence, he would know when to do what, and he would never give up this excellent opportunity to perform. When Pang Xiao's mocking smile hung on her lips, Qiu Feishan was stunned for a moment. Boss Qiu's plan is good. Pang Xiao's voice was casual, but the words he said were not friendly. Let me put it this way. Even if this king has to go to war in the future to quell the Taitan rebellion, that is because this king wants to go. It has nothing to do with you, and there is no cooperation between us. If there is not enough money, the imperial court will arrange it. This king does not need Boss Qiu's help. Qiu Feishan was stunned. She had been full of confidence since she entered the door, and she finally understood the situation. Pang Xiao was not a person who would be manipulated by others. She knew how tough he was, but she did not expect that Pang Xiao would refuse to cooperate with her at this juncture. Wang Yi, please think about it carefully. The current situation is really too unfavorable for the people. If you delay any longer, once the Taitan breaks through Huichuan, the consequences will be unimaginable. You care about the people? Pang Xiao's mocking tone was even more obvious. How can a person who cares about the world and has a sense of justice not care about the hatred of killing his own grandfather? As far as I know, your grandfather held you in the palm of his hand and carefully raised you. The person who killed your grandfather was Qiu Yuanqing. Now you're still standing on the same side as Qiu Yuanqing. This king really can't see through Boss Qiu's actions. But these are not important. This king also doesn't want to see through it. This king is a boorish man. If he can't see through some things, then there is no need to force himself. People who walk different paths cannot make plans together. Boss Chiu, you don't have to bother to persuade this king. Mu Jinghu stood at the side. When he heard Pang Zhao's words, his face was already red with shame for Qiu Feishan. He was obviously ashamed of Qiu Feishan's actions. Qiu Feishan gradually regained her composure after being stunned for a while. He didn't mind Pang Zhao's mockery at all. His words were like a slap to the face. Instead, he said, Prince Zhongshan is a smart man. Think about it. If you agree to cooperate with me now, you will be able to receive support in terms of provisions after you deploy your troops. But if you don't agree, you may still have to go to war in the future. At that time, do you expect your majesty to give you food? On the surface, these words seemed to be facts and reasoning, but in fact, it was an obvious threat. Mu Jinghu had said before that the Qiu family and the Liu family had gradually completed the transformation after the Liu family's failure. Now that the Qiu family had become a prominent family, the people buried in the court for many years could finally be used. In addition, Qiu Feishan made use of the Qiu family's financial resources and connections. If she wanted to influence anything in the court, there were many people who could help her. If Pang Zhao didn't agree to cooperate with Qiu Feishan now, she had the ability to make Pang Zhao still have to go to war. At that time, it was very likely that the court wouldn't be able to take out the money. If he didn't agree to cooperate, it would lead to an even more embarrassing ending. Enough! Without waiting for Pang Zhao to speak, Mu Jinghu couldn't bear it anymore and said angrily, Don't you think you've embarrassed yourself enough? Qiu Feishan was immediately stunned by Mu Jinghu's roar and looked at Mu Jinghu blankly. How could I marry a woman like you? Your heart is full of benefits, and you can use anyone you see. Is this marriage between you and me also something you can use as you wish? How can you say that? Qiu Feishan finally lost her composure and said anxiously, You and I are husband and wife. When have I ever harmed you? Think carefully. Have I ever done anything harmful to you? Everything I didn't involve you. I also said clearly just now, family matters are family matters, and important matters are important matters. How can you mix them up? No matter how much I did outside, I have never harmed you. Enough. Please go back. Mu Jinghu roared and stepped forward to grab Qiu Feishan's wrist and pushed her out. Bai Ying quickly came to support Qiu Feishan and screamed angrily, Son-in-law, what are you doing? Our miss. Shut up. What does it have to do with you? Mu Jinghu shouted back unceremoniously and drove the two out together. It's not enough for you to embarrass yourselves. Get lost. Qiu Feishan and Bai Ying staggered a few steps and stood firm with difficulty. Looking up at Mu Jinghu, whose eyes were full of anger, Qiu Feishan's eyes were already filled with tears. Qin Yining was worried that Mu Jinghu would not hold back in his anger and hurriedly asked someone to push Pang Zhao and bring everyone out. Mu Jinghu said, Go. Don't think of using us in the future. Whether it is Ji Shi or me, we are not marionettes in your hands that you can manipulate at will. I don't want to believe your words anymore. Mu Jinghu walked down the steps step by step, looked at Qiu Feishan's teary eyes, and said mockingly, Tell me, how much have you lied to me with this mouth of yours? How long have I been your accomplice? Aren't you afraid that Yin Ji will follow your example in the future? Who else can you tell the truth to? Qiu Feishan's tears flowed down. Mu Jinghu's heart was filled with sorrow, and his eyes were red. To avoid losing his composure, he turned and walked to the side courtyard. Qiu Feishan looked at Pang Zhao and Qin Yining, who were calm, opened her mouth, and finally squeezed out a sentence, Goodbye. Then she left quickly with Bai Ying. Qin Yining frowned as he looked at Qiu Feishan's back and sighed. What should we do? Such a good couple. Pang Zhao also sighed. After all, Mu Jinghu was his brother. It was because he was involved in their affairs that the young couple ended up in such a situation. He really felt sorry in his heart. Qin Yining and Pang Zhao returned to the bedroom, took off their coats, and the two were silent. After a long time, Qin Yining said, Ji Shi, I don't think Qiu Feishan will let this go. Maybe she will really use the power in her hands to persuade your majesty to order you to go to war. Pang Zhao nodded. I think so too. This woman may be sad because of Mu Tu's words, but in the end, won't she still do what she should do? She is a smart and cunning person. She must have a backup plan. Just as Pang Xiao and Qin Yining had guessed, in the imperial study, Li Qiqian was sitting behind a desk in a black robe, looking down at the official who was kneeling in front of him. The assistant minister of the Ministry of Revenue, Fang Shu, was already over 50 years old, but he was still strong and vigorous. When he replied, his voice was loud and clear, sonorous and forceful. Therefore, this official requests His Majesty's permission to use Prince Zhongshan to temporarily set aside his previous mistakes. For the sake of the present plan, the most important thing is to expel the Tatars from our land. If Prince Zhongshan and Duke Dingbei can cooperate, and with the addition of the Tiger Army's power, the Tatan will definitely be defeated, and the trapped Dragon Legion will also be resolved. Currently, the Dragon Legion was still trapped. Fortunately, there were many of them, and they had been trained by GZU. Furthermore, the Tatan's forces were also scattered, so they could barely hold on, and neither side could immediately defeat the other. However, in the long run, the losses of the Dragon Legion would only increase. Wouldn't that be heartbreaking? Li Qiqian rubbed his aching forehead. In the past few days, more than one official had advised him to use Pang Xiao. Not only the old officials of Beiji, but even his direct subordinates also thought so. He did not understand. Why did everyone think of Pang Xiao when war was mentioned? Could it be that without Pang Xiao in this world, there would be no way to fight a war? Seeing that Li Qiqian did not immediately reply, Fang Shu anxiously said, "Your Majesty, that's enough." Li Qiqian interrupted Fang Shu. "You can leave first. I still need to think about it." Fang Shuru's words were stuck in his throat. He took a deep breath and finally calmed down. He lowered his head respectfully and kowtowed before leaving quietly. Li Qiqian did not speak for a long time, still sitting quietly behind the desk, as if he was thinking about the current situation. Chapter 1106. Pang Xiao and Qin Yining were also thinking about how to deal with it, but the two of them connected Qiu Feishan's habits with what had happened in the past few days. In the end, they came to the same conclusion. From the looks of it, the chances of Your Majesty arranging for you to go to battle is quite high. If there really is an order, what will you do at that time? Qin Yining pursed his lips and leaned against Pang Xiao. The national treasury is empty. Your Majesty's internal funds have probably been emptied for the construction of the Imperial Mausoleum. If you go to the battlefield and you don't give them any food, what will the soldiers eat and drink? In fact, Pang Xiao was also worried in his heart, but things had already come to this point. No matter how worried he was, there was no need to show it in front of Qin Yining. It would only make her worry for no reason. Holding her delicate shoulders, Pang Xiao planted a kiss on her cheek. "Don't worry. I know what to do." Know what to do? Even if he knew what to do, what could he do? Even the cleverest housewife can't cook without rice. If he let the soldiers go to war with empty stomachs, these people would probably be full of complaints, right? Qin Yining faintly sighed and said in a low voice, "If it really doesn't work, there is a way. The things we hid outside Golden Harbor can also be used to solve the urgent situation. It's not that I haven't thought of the method you mentioned. It's just that with so much silver appearing out of nowhere, anyone would be suspicious." Seeing Qin Yining looking at him seriously, Pang Xiao was also worried that she would misunderstand that he was reluctant to use the money from the treasure. So he explained with a smile, "It's not that I'm reluctant to use the money. The money was taken from the people, so naturally it should be used for the people. I'm just considering our own safety, so I want to use a foolproof method." "I understand." Qin Yining laughed, thinking that Pang Xiao wanted to say something. "Do you think I don't understand your character? I also want to say that saving people is necessary, but at least we have to protect ourselves so we can do more things." Pang Xiao couldn't help but chuckle. "You're right. I won't act rashly. Don't worry." The two of them looked at each other and smiled. Although the imperial court was chaotic and the war was tense, it seemed that as long as the two of them could gather together, they would be able to find peace. For the next few days, Qin Yining carefully took care of Pang Xiao's body. Perhaps it was because Qin Yining was by his side, but Pang Zhao's mood was very good. His injuries were much better than 2 days ago, which made everyone around him feel relieved. After Pang Zhao was beaten in front of the palace hall, he closed his door to recuperate and no longer participated in the court assembly. However, in the past few court meetings, the most heated topic was the Taitan issue. Pang Zhao got some news from his contacts. He knew that Li Qiqian was having a heated discussion with his officials about whether to use him. Pang Zhao didn't care. He waited for the news calmly. However, many of the officials couldn't remain calm. For the next few days, the originally deserted Wang Fu suddenly had an endless stream of visitors. Even the steward of the Wang Fu and the servant in the tea room became busy. Every day, they had to greet and send off guests. They were very busy. After sending off another official, Pang Zhao heaved a sigh of relief, feeling tired. Qin Yining came out from the inner room and said with a smile, "How is it? Are you tired these days?" Pang Zhao leaned on Qin Yining, who was walking in front of him, and nodded as if he had been greatly wronged. "Isn't that so? It's too tiring to talk to these people. They only care about a few things. I have to break them down and tell them." Qin Yining was amused by him and couldn't help laughing. "So many people visit you. They either want to persuade you to go to war for the sake of the country, or they think that you might rise again. They especially want to curry favor with you, or they want to appease you. I think these people don't care about your feelings at all. There is going to be a war, and you need to fight. They only come here once, as if everyone else is a fool. They are in their positions, and they think of me because they can't think of a reliable way." Pang Zhao shook his head indifferently. "I just think that the situation in Dezhou's imperial court is very sad. Everyone is looking for small benefits, but they don't seem to care and love the people of Dezhou. Do you think that such an imperial court, such officials, can they really lead the people to live a good life?" Qin Yining patted his hand comfortingly. "When the water is too clear, there will be no fish. Hasn't the interactions of the officials in the imperial court always been like this? For their own small benefits, they can give up and sacrifice more important things at Dezhou. In their eyes, they probably only have themselves, and only the shining silver is real. Those people who purposely act like this in front of you have ulterior motives. They are most of the people in the imperial court now. I understand the logic, but I still feel helpless when I think about it." Pang Zhao put an arm around Qin Yining's shoulder and sighed quietly. Just as the two were talking in a low voice, Ji Yun's slightly anxious voice came from outside. "Wang Yi, Wang Fei, Your Majesty's Chief Steward Xiong has come. He has been arranged to drink tea in the front." Qin Yining and Pang Zhao exchanged a look, their hearts jumping. They knew that Li Qiqian finally couldn't remain calm. Pang Zhao thought, and then flipped over to lie down on the soft couch. She said to the outside, "Go tell Chief Steward Xiong that this king is unable to move right now. If he doesn't mind, invite Chief Steward Xiong to come to the inner compound for a chat." "Yes." Ji Yun quickly walked to the front hall and repeated Pang Zhao's words to him. Xiong Jinshui had always been tactful, so he didn't get angry when he heard this. He had made up his mind to take advantage of both sides. Moreover, it wasn't a secret that Pang Zhao had been beaten. On the way here, he had already made all kinds of mental preparations. He even thought that if Pang Zhao's qi wasn't going well, he wouldn't be angry even if Pang Zhao kicked him, so as to avoid losing his life in the future. Therefore, when Ji Yun said this, Xiong Jinshui immediately smiled and said, "I didn't think it through. I should have gone to Wang Ye's resting place to disturb him." Ji Yun knew that this person was a shrewd person and also knew that he had passed this obstacle. She smiled and led Xiong Jinshui to the inner compound and saw Pang Zhao lying on the couch with a pale face. Xiong Jinshui did not dare to be negligent. He bowed and said, "Greetings to Wang Yi. So it's eunuch Xiong. No need for formalities." Pang Zhao waved his hand and indicated for Xiong Jinshui to rise. He smiled and said, "This king's injuries have not yet healed. It is truly impolite of me to not personally welcome eunuch Xiong." Xiong Jinshui hurriedly said that he did not dare. He said respectfully, "Wang Yi, I have come to disturb you this time to convey your majesty's message. As he spoke, he cupped his hands in the direction of the palace to show respect and respect. Tomorrow is the day of the court assembly. Your majesty has ordered this servant to inform Wang Yi that you are to attend the court assembly on time tomorrow. Qin Yining frowned in displeasure and deliberately put on a domineering appearance. I naturally have to obey your majesty's orders. However, Wang Yi's injuries. Chief Steward Xiong, please don't take it to heart. This concubine is only worried for Wang Yi. These days, Wang Yi has been suffering from a high fever that has not subsided. He hasn't even gotten better today. If he attends the court assembly, he will be moved around and his injuries will worsen. What should we do then? At this point, the domineering dissatisfaction turned into a bellyful of grievances. Qin Yining quickly shed 2 lines of tears. Our entire family has sacrificed their lives for de Zhou's court. Even my poor son. Wang Yi's injuries are so serious right now. Instead of letting him rest, you have to attend the court assembly. Is it possible for Chief Steward Xiong to discuss with your majesty to spare my family's Wang Yi? Xiong Jinshui's forehead was dripping with cold sweat when he heard this. He almost wanted to call Qin Yining grandaunt. Please spare this servant. You think too highly of this servant. What is this servant's status? How can this servant have the right to discuss anything with your majesty? This servant is just following your majesty's orders. Xiong Jinshui couldn't help but kneel as he spoke. I beg Wang Yi to show mercy. Seeing as we are working together for your majesty, please don't make this servant fail. Pang Xiao hurriedly supported him with one hand. Chief Steward Xiong is also in a difficult situation. Moreover, since the imperial edict has been issued, I will just follow it. Xiong Jinshui saw that Pang Xiao was willing to speak up for him, and Qin Yining didn't seem like she would refute him. He couldn't help but sigh in relief. He bowed to Pang Xiao gratefully. Thank you for Wang Yi's understanding. Thank you for Wang Yi's understanding. You're too kind. Pang Xiao smiled and said, You are your majesty's personal servant. You have always served him wholeheartedly. To tell you the truth, if your majesty didn't have you by his side, how could your majesty be able to do everything smoothly and take advantage of everything? You and I are both your majesty's subjects. Naturally, we have to understand each other. Xiong Jinshui couldn't tell whether Pang Xiao was telling the truth or not, but he knew that he had passed this hurdle. After exchanging some more pleasantries with Pang Xiao, Xiong Jinshui bowed and bid farewell. Who knew that when he came out, Qin Yining gave him a little pouch. Inside was an exquisitely carved paixio with gold and jade embedded in it. Looking at the carving skills of the paixio and the waterhead of the jade, Xiong Jinshui's heart jumped. He suppressed the curve of his lips that couldn't help but rise in joy. He said with a smile, Thank you, Wang Fei. Don't mention it. I'm a woman. Sometimes my brain isn't very bright, and I don't consider my words carefully. Just now, I said those words in a moment of desperation. Please don't take it to heart, Qin Yining said with a smile. Xiong Jinshui's heart felt very warm. But if someone said that the Prince Zhongshuan's Fei had a time when her brain wasn't very bright, he definitely wouldn't believe it. He could only say that at this critical juncture, Wang Fei and Wang Fei were still able to support each other. Wang Fei was still able to do things for Wang Yi and never leave him. Even he, a palace eunuch, felt envious of such a relationship. What are you saying? Wang Fei and Wang Yi are deeply in love. You're anxious for Wang Yi, and you're thinking for Wang Yi. It is understandable. This servant admires Wang Yi and Wang Fei greatly, and will not carelessly spread it. Qin Yining thought that if the people around Li Qitian were not more perceptive, they wouldn't have lived until now. She smiled and politely sent Xiong Jinshui off. Returning to the bedroom, she saw Pang Zhao's brow furrowed, as though he was thinking of something important. Qin Yining knew that he was in a dilemma right now, so she didn't try to persuade him. She believed that Pang Xiao would make the most appropriate choice. Chapter 1107. Io, Prince Zhongshuan, long time no see. Several officials smiled and came forward to greet him. Long time no see. Is Wang Yi feeling better? Pang Shao smiled and nodded. Thank you for your concern. This king is much better. Someone lowered his voice and said with a smile, Your Majesty arranged this court assembly. Even if his body hasn't fully recovered, Wang Yi will still come for your Majesty's sake. Pang Shao glanced at this person from the corner of his eyes. Those who could attend the court assembly outside Fengtian Gate were all fourth rank and above officials in the capital. This person was an old official from the Ministry of Appointments and belonged to the faction of the old officials from Beiji. Official Lin seems to know this king well. Pang Shao smiled faintly, making it impossible to tell whether he was happy or angry. However, the discerning people around him could hear that this person's words were quite ambiguous. It was easy for people to feel that he was mocking Pang Shao. Pang Shao also didn't show any dissatisfaction. When the nobles and generals passing by saw Pang Xiao's tolerance, they couldn't help but be so angry that they almost couldn't suppress their anger. When they were fighting outside to protect their country, these civil officials only knew how to scheme against each other. It was fine if they didn't help, but they even tried to trip them up behind their backs. They were the ones fighting with their lives, but the ones with high positions and power were these people who didn't do a thing. What kind of person was Pang Shao? He was the god of war, Wang Yi, who made people tremble in fear. Behind his back, people called him a demon. Now, he was repeatedly suppressed and treated harshly by your Majesty. Not only was his family ruined, but even Wang Yi's temper had been worn away. How many grievances did he have to suffer to make Wang Yi lower his head? How was Wang Yi, who lowered his head, any different from a tiger or wolf that had its teeth pulled out? The generals and nobles felt uncomfortable. Some of them were good at enduring, so they lowered their heads and walked over. There were also some with bad tempers who spat on the spot. They didn't mention any names and only said, "A bunch of vermin." Pang Shao found it funny, but didn't say much. He shook his head and headed to where the court meeting was being held. Based on his status, he stood at the head of the generals. These days, the ministers of the Japanese imperial court were all concerned about the situation of the Titan battle. Although Ji Ziyu had the experience of defeating the enemy, Pang Shao was in the capital and had a higher chance of success if he joined forces with Ji Ziyu. Therefore, many people hoped that Pang Shao would stand up and fight against the Titan together. Pang Shao didn't care about what other people thought. He was already mentally prepared. If your Majesty gave an order, he would immediately carry it out. His thoughts were very simple. No matter what Li Qitian did, the territory of the Dezhou dynasty belonged to the Dezhou dynasty. Whoever wanted to interfere should be prepared to have their hands chopped off. The Titan were still outsiders. He would never allow the common people to fall into the hands of the Titan. Today, the front of Fengtian Palace was exceptionally quiet. Everyone had a score to settle in their hearts. At this moment, a hoarse and resounding voice unique to the eunuchs resounded through the square. Your Majesty has come to court. Ministers kneel. Everyone shouted, "Long live," and knelt down in unison. Although Pang Zhao's injuries hadn't healed, he still kowtowed with the others. He didn't break the rules at all. Li Qitian, dressed in bright yellow, walked up the steps. After sitting at the head of the table, he first looked at the leader of the generals. As expected, Pang Shao didn't make any excuses and really came. He felt a lot more comfortable. The ministers quietly waited for orders. They were only waiting for the words, "If there is a report, the court will be dismissed." Then, they would propose to your Majesty that Prince Zhongshuan be allowed to go to war with the Titan. But no one knew what Li Qitian was thinking today. He coughed, and the eunuchs all retreated. Li Qitian stood up and said passionately, "Today's court meeting, I have a few decisions to announce." Everyone was nervous, waiting for Li Qitian's next words. Pang Shao lowered his eyes. His eyes were focused on his nose, and his nose was focused on his heart. He was as steady and self-controlled as before, as if his treasured sword was still in its scabbard. It was as if he wasn't moved by this at all. Pang Shao was able to keep his composure, but some of the officials became nervous. Li Qitian saw everyone's expressions clearly. Li Qitian was very satisfied that his words could cause so many people to be nervous. But seeing that Pang Shao still had the same expression as before, as if nothing could shake him, Li Qiqian only felt that it was difficult to suppress the atmosphere in his heart. It was like this again. It was as if he had been laughing at him and mocking him. He didn't care about his decree at all. At this time, Li Qiqian was more and more sure that his decision was correct. Li Qiqian stood up and said first, "I order Gao Wenliang to be the commander-in-chief of the Tiger Army. He will command 100,000 troops to reinforce Huichuan." As soon as these words came out, the entire court was silent. Everyone was stunned. Their mouths were wide open, and they couldn't react for a long time. It was true that the Tiger Army was brave and fierce, but the only person who could bring out the Tiger Army's ability to the extreme was Pang Xiao, who had single-handedly raised the Tiger Army. Before today's court meeting, many people thought that Pang Xiao would definitely go to war and regain control of the Tiger Army. But no one thought that Your Majesty was actually afraid of Pang Xiao to this extent. Ning Yuan was threatened by Taitan, but he was unwilling to teach the Tiger Army to him. Those officials and generals who hoped that Pang Xiao would go to war were shocked and couldn't come back to their senses. And those officials who secretly belonged to the Qiu family were even more shocked at this time. They were so nervous that their bodies were trembling. They had done their homework. Your Majesty had ordered people to persuade him. Who would have thought that Your Majesty didn't even consider their thoughts? He couldn't be at ease to arrange for Pang Xiao to go to war. As for Gao Wenliang, he was extremely shocked at this time. He used to be Ji Ziyu's subordinate. Later, his official career was smooth, and he was promoted. In his heart, he admired Ji Ziyu and Pang Xiao. This was not unusual. In the entire Dezhou, which general didn't admire Ji Ziyu and Pang Xiao? But he never thought that one day he would be the commander-in-chief of the Tiger Army. Your Majesty, Your Majesty. This official, Gao Wenliang, strode out, saluted, and said in a rough voice, "This official is afraid. This official. What? Does Marshal Gao still want to defy the decree?" Li Qiqian didn't wait for him to finish speaking. He had already pulled a long face and scolded in a deep voice, "Don't you want to go to war and fight against Taitan together with Duke Ding? Of course this official is willing, but this official is inexperienced. I'm afraid it's okay. You just need to accept the decree." Hearing Li Qiqian's voice raise, Gao Wenliang didn't dare to say more. He could only salute like a duck being driven to a perch. During this time, Li Qiqian had been observing Pang Xiao's situation. He saw Pang Xiao standing with his hands by his side, looking down as if he didn't care about what was happening outside. Li Qiqian became even angrier. Wasn't Pang Zhishi a Dezhou citizen? Didn't he have any emotional fluctuations about going to war? Since this was the case, Li Qiqian didn't hesitate. "Pang Zhishi, this official is here." Pang Xiao strode forward. He saluted respectfully. All the civil and military officials looked in the direction of Pang Xiao. Li Qiqian said, "The disaster in the south is serious. When the Earth Dragon turned over, you were outside to provide relief. You must have a lot of experience. You will also be more confident in dealing with the disaster relief. The people are the foundation of Dezhou. I will give this task to you. You will be the special envoy for disaster relief. You will be sent to the south to control the flood and prevent the people from suffering." Everyone was even more shocked than before. They couldn't close their mouths. Most of them were smart people. What didn't they understand at this time? Your Majesty was clearly afraid of Prince Zhongshuan and didn't dare to let him touch the Tiger Army. He would rather let him, the god of war, Wang Yi, who had outstanding ability and was very likely to expel the Taitan, do disaster relief. Indeed, Pang Xiao had experience in disaster relief and had a lot of experience. However, when he went to the south to provide relief, it was because the Earth Dragon turned over, so the disaster area must be limited. But now, this year, Dezhou was plagued by natural and man-made disasters. Your Majesty used the already insufficient money to build the Imperial Mausoleum. The national treasury was empty, and he didn't think of a proper way to solve the problem. Instead, he let it flow on its own, causing the national treasury to not receive enough food. At the critical moment, the granaries in Dezhou couldn't hold on, The people didn't have food to eat, and there were also black-hearted merchants who hoarded food and sold it at high prices to provide relief. The people had to calculate their daily meals, let alone those black-hearted merchants who sold food at sky-high prices. They couldn't afford it, so they could only endure and eat tree roots and grass. Some people couldn't survive in their hometown and fled. There were also people who organized to attack various government offices and started revolts. This month alone, there were 4 places where people rebelled. Now that your majesty gave this task to Pang Xiao, it was obvious what he wanted to do. To resist foreign enemies. Even if your majesty was poor, he would take out money. However, when Pang Xiao went to provide relief, if your majesty didn't take out money, the relief couldn't be carried out. If the relief couldn't be carried out, who would the people hate? At that time, the first person they would hate would be Pang Xiao, the official who organized the relief. Your Majesty's move was too vicious. He wanted to use this chaos to make Pang Xiao completely give up here, so that he would have enough time to frame Pang Xiao. This way, he could get rid of a big problem in his heart. However, in this time of internal and external troubles, your Majesty only cared about getting rid of Pang Xiao, a hidden danger to the throne, to consolidate his position. Was this really considered responsible? Pang Xiao raised the corners of his mouth in self-mockery. Should he be thinking about how important he was in Li Qitian's heart? He should be honored to be targeted so heavily by Li Qitian. However, did Li Qitian really not care about Taitan's foreign enemies? Pang Xiao thought for a moment and understood. It wasn't that Li Qitian didn't care about Taitan, nor did he not want to destroy Taitan to strengthen the country's prestige. What he did was a two-pronged decision. Jiziyu had destroyed Taitan once, and this time, the Tiger Army joined in. However, Li Qitian was right. Even if Pang Xiao wasn't here, Jiziyu and Gao Wenliang could easily take down Taitan. At that time, Li Qitian would be able to sit back and relax after getting rid of the outsiders and convicting Pang Xiao of crime. He smiled and thought through all this in the blink of an eye, and his face was unprecedentedly calm. This subject obeys your majesty, Pang Xiao bowed, which affected the wound on his hip, causing him to move for a moment in pain. However, Pang Xiao stood up as if nothing had happened and asked in the hall, "Your Majesty, the disaster in the south is serious. How much grain, money, and medicine did your Majesty prepare for the disaster relief? With this order, this subject can also count and prepare in advance." Chapter 1108. When Pang Xiao heard this, he suddenly sat up. However, because he got up in such a hurry, he forgot that he was still injured. He hissed in pain as he sucked in a cold breath. Qin Yining was startled. He hurriedly supported Pang Xiao's arm and helped him find a more comfortable position. "How can you be so reckless? You're still injured. Did you forget?" Pang Xiao raised his hand. "I know. Before we leave the day after tomorrow, we must carefully examine the disaster relief items in front of everyone." He held Qin Yining in his arms and shook him. "Sister Yi, you're really my darling. You might not have thought of this. You're just lost in your thoughts. That's not true. A man with a virtuous wife will never meet with misfortune. You don't know how many people envy me." Pang Xiao whispered something in her ear. Qin Yining's face immediately turned red. She hit him. "Why are you so annoying?" Pang Xiao didn't mind and continued to look at her with a smile. A day passed in the blink of an eye. After Pang Xiao made proper arrangements for the trip, Xie Yu, Su Weiji, and the other strategists left first. In order to avoid danger, Pang Xiao also arranged for Tang Xiu to lead a group of people to follow and protect them. Qin Yining gathered all the servants in the inner residence and gave them double the monthly salary. "We don't know when we'll return from this disaster relief trip. Perhaps it'll be a year or so, or perhaps it'll be 3 to 5 years. For such a long time, the prince's mansion only needs people to look after the house. When Wang Yi and I return, I'll invite all of you here." The servants naturally obeyed. They took the money and left. The rest of the people were the ones who were going to be taken with them on this trip. Although Li Qitian gave them a tight deadline of only 1 day, Pang Xiao and Qin Yining had already prepared everything. On the morning of the 11th day, Pang Xiao and Qin Yining had just finished dressing when someone came in to report. Wang Yi, your Majesty has personally come to see you off. Qin Yining and Pang Xiao glanced at each other. They had already guessed what Li Qitian wanted to do. The two of them led everyone out of the gate of the Wang Fu and respectfully knelt down in front of the gate to greet him. Li Qitian stepped down from the imperial chariot and looked down at the couple who were bowing respectfully. He stepped forward with a smile and said, "What are you doing? Zhishi, you haven't recovered from your injuries. Besides, you and I are brothers. You don't have to do this." While they were talking, there were already many people gathered in front of the Wang mansion. Carriages slowly drove in and stopped by the road in front of the Wang mansion. Pang Xiao glanced at the row of carriages out of the corner of his eye. There were 20 tails in total. He turned his head and respectfully said, "Although your Majesty has said so, the etiquette between ruler and subject cannot be ignored. A subject is a subject. The Son of Heaven is the Son of Heaven. How can a subject be careless with the etiquette?" Li Qitian smiled and nodded. He glanced at Qin Yining behind Pang Xiao and said, "Wang Fei, I haven't seen you for many days. Where did you go to play?" Qin Yining knew that Li Qitian had once ordered people to track and kidnap her to threaten her. But she was very lucky and did not encounter Li Qitian's people. This Son of Heaven was so narrow-minded that he was willing to make a move on a woman. Qin Yining felt that this kind of person was very shameless. Replying, "Your Majesty, I was just taking a casual stroll. The natural and man-made disasters are becoming more and more serious, so I returned to Jing." Li Qitian thought for a moment and did not ask any more questions. He also did not mention Pang Xiao and Qin Yining's rude behavior that day. He only smiled and said, "Zhishi, there is no need for us to say more about the importance of disaster relief, right? When you go this time, you must do your best to relieve the suffering of the people. We don't want to see the miserable scene of the people losing their homes." But this was caused by this person in front of him. Qin Yining lowered his long eyelashes, perfectly hiding the disdain in his eyes. Pang Xiao said, "Your Majesty is right. I am afraid this subject will do my best to share your Majesty's burden." He then looked at the carriages parked by the road and said with a smile, "These are the supplies for the disaster relief of the victims?" Li Qitian smiled and nodded, "Yes. These have been recorded. You can take them with you." As he spoke, he turned his head and indicated. Xiong Jinshui's hands immediately touched a small book with a dark blue cover. Pang Xiao took it and respectfully thanked His Majesty for his kindness. He took the account book and turned to leave. He handed it to Huzi. "Take some people to count the goods. The supplies in the carriages must be taken apart and displayed in public." "Yes." Huzi nodded respectfully and quickly left. Li Qitian's brows were tightly knitted. His face was hot and his heart was somewhat flustered. Pang Xiao excused himself and led Qin Yining forward to help. Li Qitian hurriedly said, "The things recorded in the book have been brought over. It's almost the auspicious time to set off. You should also make some preparations." Pang Xiao did not seem to understand Li Qitian's words. He smiled and said, "Yes, this subject is making preparations." Seeing Pang Xiao getting busy, Li Qitian's brows were furrowed so tightly that they could squash a fly. Zhen said that the auspicious time has arrived. "We cannot delay the departure time. Otherwise, according to the imperial astronomer's calculations, it will be a very bad thing. Zhishi, you and Wang Fei should quickly get on the carriage and set off immediately." Although Li Qitian's tone was that of a discussion, he was the emperor. His words were like gold and jade. Pang Xiao could not disobey His Majesty's decree in public. He could only lead Qin Yining to the carriages. Huzi, on the other hand, began to inspect the carriages with great fanfare. He did not care whether or not the carriages that were already packed would be overturned. The veins on Li Qitian's forehead were bulging. He immediately said, "Zhen ordered us to set off immediately. Are you deaf?" Xiong Jinshui followed beside the emperor. Since the emperor had spoken, how could he dare to remain silent? Xiong Jinshui quickly walked in front of Pang Xiao and said, Hurry up. Your Majesty's decree cannot be disobeyed. Pang Xiao did not have any ill feelings towards Xiong Jinshui. His attitude could be considered polite, but his voice was as loud as a bell. Since your Majesty said that we cannot disobey, then all the more we should investigate clearly. We cannot allow anyone to take advantage of this loophole. What if someone uses this opportunity to embezzle the disaster relief supplies? Then it is better to investigate clearly in person. This will prevent this official from becoming a scapegoat for no reason. Pang Zhao's words were very direct. Everyone present was shocked. The commoners who were watching from a street far away were separated by the imperial guards. When they saw this, they could not help but whisper among themselves. The world is already in chaos. Who would embezzle disaster relief supplies? Wouldn't that be intolerable? You don't know. There are even more despicable grain merchants in the south who are still profiting from the disaster. Who knows? In the blink of an eye, someone might use fake supplies to deceive Wang Yi. Li Qitian gritted his teeth when he heard this. He had made up his mind to be a benevolent ruler today, so he could not do anything. He could only nod with a smile. Fine. Since you don't trust us, then it is right to settle things clearly in person. This official is afraid. How would this official dare to doubt your Majesty? Pang Xiao immediately knelt down with a plop. He did not care about the wounds on his body. Qin Yining also quickly knelt down. As a woman, it was not convenient for her to speak. She could only lower her head and tremble. It was as if she was frightened by Li Qitian's words. The commoners did not know what was going on. When they saw Wang Yi kneel down, they also knelt down. Prince Zhongshuan's voice in the court was too loud. Many commoners who cared about the court even felt that Pang Xiao could go to war with the Tatan. They did not expect that your Majesty would arrange for him to go to disaster relief. The commoners did not feel at ease. Taking advantage of the distance, their discussions became louder and louder. There were even people whispering that Pang Xiao, a general who had made great contributions, was now a hero who had no place to display his abilities. He was even suppressed by your Majesty and could only obediently kneel down and kowtow. He did not even dare to explain himself. As the commoners thought this, the discussions of those who were not careful enough became louder. Although Li Qitian did not know what the commoners were thinking, he could roughly guess from their expressions. How could he have forgotten that Pang Zhishi was the best at winning people's sympathy and making them stand on the same side as him? Although he was angry, Li Qitian had already thought of a countermeasure and was no longer flustered. Originally, he was just trying his luck today. If he could use this method to subdue Pang Xiao, it would be an unexpected gain. If he could not, it did not matter. He was the son of heaven. Could it be that he could not intimidate a small person like Wang Yi? After a short moment of anger, Li Qitian changed the topic. Your inspection is correct. After all, we have many things to attend to every day. We do not have to do everything by ourselves. For example, the supplies for disaster relief this time were used urgently and in large quantities. We did not have time to inspect them carefully. It is good that you inspect them carefully. Otherwise, if something goes wrong, we would be letting down the victims. Pang Xiao lowered his head and looked at the ground. Li Qitian's shadow was elongated by the morning sun and cast a shadow on the limestone tiles in front of him. It seemed that Li Qitian had stopped immediately after his plan failed and was planning to arrange for someone to take the blame. Pang Xiao cursed inwardly, but on the surface he smiled and kowtowed. Yes, this subject will definitely inspect them carefully. Sure enough, it didn't take long for Huzi and his men to check the contents of the carriages. Then, he handed the booklet to Pang Xiao and said, "Your Highness, we didn't find any gold or silver in the carriages. These 20 carriages of provisions and fodder can only fill 10 or so carriages. There is no gold or silver written on the booklet." Pang Xiao handed the booklet to Li Qitian and said with a smile, "Your Majesty, this subject will not look into the missing parts. However, Your Majesty must strictly investigate the person who recorded the false accounts, or this person has embezzled the imperial court's money. This subject believes that the person who tampered with the books has ulterior motives. Think about it. This subject went to the south to carry out an errand for your majesty's sake. Naturally, this subject will be indebted to your majesty. This subject is also a capable person by your majesty's side. If this subject uses this to drive a wedge between you and your subject, it will be difficult to carry out disaster relief in the future. Li Qiqian nodded repeatedly, but he secretly sighed in relief. Fortunately, Pang Xiao had a different idea and did not directly suspect him. Otherwise, he would not be able to explain himself in front of these people, let alone in the distant future. Rest assured, this subject will investigate thoroughly. Li Qiqian's face was as calm as water. Pang Xiao said respectfully, "Yes, this subject thanks your majesty." After he finished speaking, he turned and ordered Huzi, "Take people and gather the provisions. It will be easier to manage them after the trip. Otherwise, if the procession is too long, there will be trouble." Huzi immediately obeyed and took people to move the supplies. When the supplies were moved, the guards of the prince's mansion did not ask the people to move away. Everyone's eyes were fixed on them, and no one had a chance to do anything. After the provisions and supplies were loaded into the carriages, Pang Xiao counted the number of carriages and said with a smile, 8 carriages could have transported the provisions, but the Ministry of Revenue actually packed 20 carriages. Chapter 1109. Your Majesty is wise. This subject knew that your Majesty would not easily tolerate a vile person who wants to falsely accuse this subject and sow discord between the ruler and subject. Pang Xiao bowed with a face full of admiration. His attitude was sincere, and there was no flaw in it at all. Li Qiqian was so angry that his heart was beating wildly. He almost couldn't maintain his composure. Pang Zhishi dared to insult him indirectly and call him a vile person, but he couldn't flare up. At this time, Li Qiqian only felt that he and Pang Zhishi were destined to clash. This person was born to be his nemesis. Not wanting to see Pang Zhao's proud face any longer, Li Qiqian squeezed out an amiable smile and said, "Although we will investigate this matter strictly, the disaster relief cannot be delayed. You should set off immediately. Use these provisions carefully." "Yes, this subject obeys your majesty." When Pang Xiao saw that Li Qiqian didn't even mention the matter of making up for the 12 carriages of provisions, he understood. He didn't argue and led Qin Yining and his subordinates to respectfully bow to Li Qiqian. Li Qiqian was very satisfied with Pang Zhao's thorough etiquette. His mood improved slightly, and he nodded, allowing everyone to set off. Pang Zhao's group escorted the 8 carriages of provisions and set off, heading out of the city. Seeing Pang Zhao's group leave, Li Qiqian returned to the imperial carriage and set off back to the palace. In the distance, the commoners who were craning their necks to watch all knelt down and kowtowed, shouting, "Long live your majesty." Li Qiqian's mood didn't improve because of this. Today's plan didn't succeed, but so many commoners also saw this scene. This matter would soon spread from 1 person to 10 people and 100 people to 100 people in the capital. When that time came, how many people would slander him behind his back and spread rumors about him? It was time to show some attitude. Thinking of this, he secretly made a decision in his heart. Qin Yining and Pang Xiao left the capital, but they didn't pay attention to Li Qiqian's solution to this matter. He's someone who cares about his reputation. With so many people watching, he'll definitely think of a way to put on an act. Qin Yining sat sideways in the carriage, leaving most of the space for Pang Xiao to lie down. "I just didn't expect him to come up with such a way to slander you. Earlier, I solemnly reminded you to be careful, but in my heart, I felt that I was making a mountain out of a molehill. Fortunately, I listened to you." Pang Xiao let out a sigh. "It would be too stupid to discover it halfway or passively wait for your majesty's next move." Qin Yining smiled sweetly. When he lifted the curtain and looked back, he saw the 8 carriages. When he thought about how your majesty had only given 8 carts of coarse rice and other grains for the disaster relief in the south, it was simply a drop in the bucket for the current disaster. It seemed that when it was necessary, the treasure would have to be used. As Qin Yining expected, the 8 carriages of grain were not enough to support them all the way to the south. Pang Xiao observed the small towns along the way and found that they had used up a whole carriage of grain. Qin Yining's eyes turned red when she saw those emaciated children with big heads and thin necks chasing the grain carriages barefoot, just to get some rice to cook porridge for their parents who were too hungry to get up. I've been protected too well by you all this time. Even if I know there's a disaster, I can't feel it without seeing it with my own eyes. Outside Golden Harbor City, Qin Yining and Pang Xiao stood on the side of the road and watched the accompanying guards of the Wang Fu set up a porridge stall. Then they looked in the distance and saw the people who had gathered cautiously and didn't dare to come forward. Qin Yining made a decision. Jishi, if I had some hesitation about using the treasure in the past, now I don't have any hesitation at all. Pang Xiao's expression was also grave. She held Qin Yining's hand and nodded. I feel the same. Qin Yining felt that his fingertips were cold. He pulled his fingertips closer to Pang Xiao's warm palm. There was not enough grain, so the porridge stall could only distribute thin porridge. But even if the porridge and soup could be seen, the people still cherished it very much. The grain was finished in less than 3 days. Pang Xiao only had the empty carriage left in his hands. When they left the porridge stall and headed towards Golden Harbor City, the people's despairing and numb eyes were truly piercing. In front of natural disaster, the power of a person was really too small. But fortunately, they still had a chance to fight. The situation in Golden Harbor City was better than outside the city, but it was much worse than when Qin Yining came last time. Pang Xiao brought so many attendants and drove an empty carriage. Her appearance was very eye-catching. He did not deliberately announce his identity on the way here. Now, he was also keeping a low profile. Many people in Golden Harbor thought that he was taking advantage of the country's disaster to make a fortune. They had not found a place to settle down when they were stopped by the newly appointed county magistrate Chun. Wang Yi, you're finally here. Have you brought any provisions with you? Ever since I received the news that you came to provide disaster relief, this official has been making preparations. I was waiting for you to come so that I could provide grain and porridge to solve the urgent situation. The previous county magistrate of Golden Harbor had been punished by Li Qitian because of the fire at Golden Harbor's pier and the warning of the fire dragon. The new county magistrate of Golden Harbor had just taken office not long ago. He was very upright and plain-spoken, although he was a grand scholar in the last years of the previous dynasty. Because he was not tactful and flexible, he could only be a 7th-rank official. Pang Xiao had heard of this county magistrate Chun. When he saw him today, he knew that the rumors were true. This county magistrate Chun was indeed a straightforward person. He did not have any misgivings when he spoke. If it was any other official who would say such ambiguous words, it was as if he, a small county magistrate, dared to question Wang Ye's ability. However, when he saw County Magistrate Chen's expectant face, Pang Xiao knew that he did not have any other intentions. Instead, he did not know how to respond to his expectations. Lord Chun, when this king left the capital, your majesty arranged for 8 carriages of grain. Along the way, they encountered countless disaster victims. This king could not leave them to die, so he could only set up porridge stalls by the roadside to provide food for the people. Therefore, by the time we reached you, all the provisions this prince had brought had already been used up. This time, I would like to ask for your help. When County Magistrate Chun heard this, he was in his 40s, but he was so aggrieved that he almost burst into tears. How could this be? How could this be? 8 carriages of grain? How big are the carriages? As he muttered to this point, County Magistrate Chun saw the empty carriages Pang Xiao brought. They were just ordinary carriages. How could they only give so little grain when they sent people out to provide relief? This is simply unbelievable. Does your majesty not know that there is not enough grain outside? Does he not know how many innocent people have starved to death? Lord Chun, please calm down and be careful with your words. It was rare for Pang Xiao to meet such an honest person who would question the emperor for the sake of the people. Naturally, he could not bear to let him bear the blame. However, the honest county magistrate, Chun, did not understand Pang Zhao's thoughts. Prince Zhongshuan is the emperor's subordinate. Naturally, he will speak for the emperor. You have lived like a prince in the capital. Naturally, you do not know how many people have starved to death. Why did you agree to bring 8 carriages of grain out? County Magistrate Chun stamped his feet. How dare you? Huzi could not bear to listen any longer. He reprimanded. The national treasury is empty. Your Majesty does not have any money either. After so many years of war, do you think that you do not need money? Moreover, your Majesty still needs to build the imperial mausoleum. Is it wrong for your Majesty to use money to build the imperial mausoleum? Now that there is no money to provide relief, the 8 carriages of grain were all fought for by Wang Yi. How dare you be so picky? Are you not afraid that your Majesty will punish you severely when he finds out? Qin Yining secretly shook his head as he listened to the county magistrate. The people around Pang Zhao naturally learned some of his ways of doing things. Huzi's words seemed to be speaking for your Majesty, but in fact, it only increased County Magistrate Chen's dissatisfaction with your Majesty's actions. He had unknowingly given Li Qitian another crime. County Magistrate Chun was furious when he heard this. However, he also knew that his words carried little weight. He had spoken so harshly just now. It was already Wang Yi's mercy that Wang Yi did not punish him. The people around Wang Yi naturally spoke on Wang Yi's orders. If he contradicted this imperial bodyguard, wouldn't he also contradict Wang Yi? County Magistrate Chun suppressed his anger. He lowered his head and said with determination, Wang Yi, you have been ordered to provide relief. Since you have arrived at Golden Harbor, you should focus on providing relief. Whether the people of Golden Harbor can survive depends on Wang Yi. Pang Zhao said helplessly, this king also has to send a letter to your Majesty to ask for food. I can't guarantee anything at the moment. Seeing that Pang Zhao did not dare to guarantee anything, County Magistrate Chun became anxious. County Magistrate Chun was anxious and angry. He grabbed Pang Zhao's sleeve and said, Your Highness, you can't just stand by and watch him die. There are so many people waiting for you to save them. If you can't come up with a plan when necessary, don't blame me for being too ruthless. I can't let you leave Golden Harbor, even if I have to risk my life. Qin Yining clicked his tongue when he heard this. Wasn't this lord a little too forceful? He really dared to say that he would detain Pang Zhao here? This person clearly knew what Pang Zhao was thinking. He knew that Pang Zhao was not someone who would target the people and would not punish him for such a thing. That was why he dared to make such a tough request. Qin Yining shook his head and sighed softly. Pang Zhao really couldn't do anything to such an unreasonable official who wanted the good of the people. Pang Zhao really did not get angry. He just patted County Magistrate Chen's shoulder and said, This king will immediately send a letter to ask your Majesty to send food. Please cooperate with us and pacify the people, including those who are waiting outside the city for food. This king will not leave. When the people here can survive, this king will go to the old capital of Dian. County Magistrate Chun was stunned by Pang Zhao's kind and reasonable attitude. He even wondered if Wang Yi would kill him in anger, but he still did it. He was betting that the rumor that Prince Zhongshuan was a benevolent and righteous person was true. Now that he saw Prince Zhongshuan's character, County Magistrate Chen couldn't help but pull back his hand that was pulling Pang Zhao's sleeve. He knelt down with a thud and kowtowed 3 times. He didn't care even when his forehead turned purple. For the people of Golden Harbor, this official thanks Wang Yi. Pang Zhao quickly helped him up and comforted him. You and I are doing this for the same purpose. Disaster relief is this king's duty. How can I accept such a big gift from Lord Qin? County Magistrate Chun waved his hand and shook his head with an ashamed smile. Pang Zhao said, I will need Lord Qin's cooperation these days. Chapter 11:10. Then, I'll have to trouble official Chun. This way, Wang Yi. Magistrate Chun warmly led the way. Pang Zhao nodded and turned to look at Qin Yining. Qin Yining smiled and motioned for him to go first. He himself followed behind with his servant girls and attendants. Behind them was the empty carriage. The group of people headed in the direction of the yamen. Qin Yining had been to Jingang many times. This time, he saw that the streets were in a state of decay. Fortunately, it was near the sea, and the situation was slightly better than what he had seen along the way. But the city that was shrouded in the dark clouds of famine was still lifeless. Not only were the people like withered grass that had been sucked dry of water, even the roof tiles, curtains, and banners were in tatters. Weeds grew out of the cracks in the tiles and withered due to the cold weather. All of Jingang seemed to be shrouded in a layer of black fog. It was indescribably lifeless and decadent. Official Chun came to the yamen because of Pang Xiao and the others. He smiled and said, "When I knew that Wang Yi was coming, this official had already arranged for my family to stay elsewhere. Wang Yi and Wang Fei can stay here without worry. This official will be outside. If you have any instructions, just let me know at any time." "Thank you for your trouble, Official Chen." Pang Xiao thanked him politely. Lord Chen shook his head and said straightforwardly, "Your Highness, you don't have to be so polite. This is all this lowly official's responsibility. I only ask that your Highness will do his best to help the common people survive. This lowly official is willing to be a cow or a horse." A word of thanks made Official Chun feel deeply moved. Qin Yining watched from aside. He felt that Official Chun was still so straightforward even after the age of 40. What was even rarer was that his thoughts were pure. He was doing it for the people and not just for himself. This made him worthy of respect. Official Chen quickly left and hurried to comfort the people. Pang Xiao and Qin Yining organized their luggage for the time being. Huzi and Jing kept a tight watch around the bedroom. Qin Yining felt relieved and asked Pang Xiao in a low voice, "Where did Mr. Xie go?" "The main body should be arriving soon. They set off earlier than us and took some detours. They also deliberately avoided us to avoid attracting attention. I think they will arrive in these 2 days." Qin Yining nodded. He took the soft eiderdown cushion that Jian took out from her bundle and laid it on the official's hat chair by the window. He patted it lightly and said, "Come and rest for a while. The journey was so bumpy and tiring. I wonder if your wounds have reopened." Pang Xiao looked at the thick and soft mattress and couldn't help laughing. Before they left, Qin Yining was worried that he would feel uncomfortable in the car, so he had rushed to make it overnight. He sat up and felt very comfortable. "I'm not made of paper. I'm almost healed. How come I wound open again? You just need to relax." Even though he said that, his wounds still hurt slightly when he sat down. Pang Xiao naturally didn't care. He had fought on a battlefield and suffered countless injuries, big and small. He couldn't even remember when and how he got the scars on his body. They were just superficial wounds from being beaten. To him, being beaten made him angrier than the pain. However, while Pang Xiao didn't care about the pain, Qin Yining seemed to empathize with him. Seeing that his movements were sluggish for a moment when he sat down, Qin Yining hurriedly said, "Don't be in a hurry to do anything these days. It's more important to recuperate first. If you want to investigate the situation in the city, just let your subordinates do it separately. This way, you can investigate more clearly." Pang Xiao smiled and nodded. He raised his hand and pinched Qin Yining's white and tender face. "You're so young and naggy. You're almost an old mother. If it were someone else, I wouldn't be bothered to say that." Qin Yining rolled his eyes at him. His shimmering eyes were like flowing waves. Pang Xiao felt that this woman was always so captivating. Just one look was enough to make his heart ripple. He pulled her into his arms, startling Qin Yining. "What are you doing?" Pang Xiao didn't answer. Only his warm lips landed on her white face and cheeks. He cherished her as if Qin Yining was a rare treasure that he had painstakingly obtained. Qin Yining tried not to press Pang Xiao down so that his wounds wouldn't hurt. However, his warm and firm embrace and his joyful gaze made Qin Yining's heart burn with passion and moved him. They had been married for many years. Their journey had been bumpy and they rarely spent time together. However, he had never been swayed by prosperity. He always treated her the same. Qin Yining's body and heart softened. She leaned on his shoulder and enjoyed this rare moment of silence. At this moment, The two of them didn't want to talk about national affairs. She just wanted to be with Pang Xiao. It would be enough if they could live a peaceful life. She didn't need any glory or wealth. She just wanted her whole family to be able to gather together peacefully. However, the natural disaster was getting worse day by day. There were uprisings against Li Qitian everywhere. Li Qitian was so afraid of Pang Xiao. Dezhou could be said to be facing strong enemies from outside and internal problems from within. They had even caught up with the natural disaster. They didn't have the right time, the right place, and the right people. However, Pang Xiao's identity couldn't ignore these things. Qin Yining only allowed herself to be weak for a moment, because she knew that if she wanted to realize her dream and live a peaceful life with her family, there were indeed some things that could be done while the world was in chaos. Zhishi, it's better to order people to carefully observe the situation in the city these days. Sir Xie and the others are about to arrive. We also need to make preparations in advance. When he met her bright and beautiful eyes, Pang Xiao couldn't care about anything else in his heart. He planted a few more light kisses on her cheeks before he finally compromised under her unwilling gaze. Don't worry, I'll handle these things carefully. However, based on what I see now, I'm afraid that if we don't touch the treasures, it won't be enough to let the people live. Qin Yining's expression was also a bit heavy. She nodded and said, "You think so? If your majesty could get food, why would he fake it and scheme? Who doesn't rub powder on their face? It seems that your majesty really doesn't have the money to buy food. In addition, the granaries in various places have been abandoned for many years. That's why he can't take out food at this critical moment. Our Dezhou has indeed experienced natural and man-made disasters. However, it's not to the extent that the entire Dezhou dynasty has run out of food. There is still food, and there must be some from the previous year's storage. However, these are not in your majesty's hands." Pang Xiao's words hit the nail on the head. Qin Yining nodded repeatedly and said, "That's right. There are people everywhere who make money from the country's calamity. Those merchants and rich people have more noble titles than ordinary people. They also have the financial ability to support themselves. This year's natural disaster was foretold. From then on, they began to stockpile food. Now, they're selling it at a high price. They can earn a large sum of money and feed their own families. It's the best of both worlds. Isn't that right? You've analyzed their hearts thoroughly." Pang Xiao patted her delicate shoulder with his large hand and said with a smile, "However, don't worry. They're stockpiling food to do business. If your majesty really can't take out the rice, we will have to think of a way to buy it from these rich people who have stockpiled food." Speaking of purchasing, they naturally had to use the silver from the treasure. "I know. I also think that the treasure should be taken from the people and used by the people. It's just that I'm a little worried. After all, the people who know about the treasure are all your trusted aides. Since they're doing their best to assist you, it's undeniable that they're more or less trying to get the credit of succeeding the emperor. These people are the mainstays of your side. It's best that you don't make a decision that will disappoint them." Pang Xiao sighed helplessly. "I won't disappoint them. However, I can already foresee that if we want to use the treasure, we will have to go through a complicated process. Many of them will not be willing to let me take out the silver to give to the people for free." Qin Yining's expression was grave. "That's exactly what I am worried about. Your followers and strategists are doing their best to follow us. Naturally, we have to consider their feelings. However, whether or not the silver should be used by the people can also become a topic of discussion. This shows that these people are against it. If you can't persuade them, I'm afraid that they will become more and more dissatisfied with you. This is understandable. They're following you because they want you to reach that position." Pang Xiao did not say anything. She only hugged Qin Yining's waist and pulled him into her embrace. Qin Yining's meaning was very clear. She was worried that if he insisted on using the treasure, those who followed him would betray him. Moreover, they had a lot of his secrets in their hands. This was a very big, unforeseen event for him. However, could he ignore the lies of the people just because he was worried about this? If he did that, then he would really become a person like Li Qitian. "Don't worry, I will take care of these things." After hearing Pang Xiao's words, Qin Yining did not continue this topic. In any case, the result was the same for them. As long as they worked for the people, it would be difficult for them to escape some fixed fate. For the next day, Qin Yining and Pang Xiao arranged for people to go to the city to investigate the situation. The news they received was even more disappointing and helpless than they had imagined. Even though it was a city near the sea, half of the people had starved to death. Although the situation here was still better than the miserable situation they had encountered on the way here, 9 out of 10 houses were empty. However, Qin Yining still could not maintain a smile on his face. In the evening, when the sky was filled with red clouds, Huzi came back and said, Wang Yi, Wang Fei, Tang Xiao is protecting Sir Xia, Sir Su, and a few other gentlemen. They have already arrived at the main hall in front of the second courtyard through the side door. Pang Xiao thought for a moment, then stood up and said to Qin Yining, You rest first. I will go and see those gentlemen. Qin Yining knew that he was going to discuss serious matters, so he smiled and nodded. Go ahead. We will wait for you to come back and eat dinner together. If you encounter any problems, don't be impatient. You can discuss it properly. Since Qin Yining said this, it meant that he was certain that he would encounter some obstacles on this trip. I know. Don't worry. I'm not an unreasonable person. Qin Yining stood up and sent Pang Xiao out. When they arrived at the second courtyard, he could not help but remind him, this is not a place to talk. You have to be careful. Pang Xiao turned to look at Qin Yining, who was chasing after her and nagging. Seeing that her beautiful eyebrows were furrowed, she could not help but smile reassuringly. Don't worry. I know how to deal with it. Qin Yining could only nod and lead Ji Yun and Bing Tang back to their room worriedly. Chapter 11:11. Xie Yu and Su Weiji immediately sighed heavily. The other strategists also had grave expressions. To be honest, what we've seen and heard along the way is truly depressing. We've followed Wang Yi for so many years, and all we ask for is to not see such a miserable scene again. Exactly. I really don't know what your majesty is thinking. Does he not know that the world is in such a miserable state? Speaking of this, the strategists were filled with righteous indignation. They all reprimanded with dissatisfaction. Your majesty's actions are truly too heartless. As an emperor, all he thinks about is not how to benefit the people, but how to concentrate all his strength and not care about the lives of his subordinates. That's right, such actions, such petty behavior, it truly makes one look down on him. They had followed Pang Xiao for a long time. With Xie Yu and Su Weiji as the leaders, they had come into contact with many secrets that others had not come into contact with. For example, the matter of the treasure, everyone present knew about it. Pang Xiao trusted them so much and allowed them to come into contact with the most secret of matters. In their hearts, they naturally felt that their status was a level higher than the other strategists who had not been invited. Thus, when they spoke of these matters, they did not have any misgivings and said whatever they thought. Pang Xiao allowed everyone to vent their thoughts. Only then did he say in a low voice, Since things have come to this, it is useless to think about your majesty's actions. The disaster is wreaking havoc right now. I'm sure everyone has seen it clearly along the way. After Pang Xiao spoke, everyone fell silent and looked questioningly at Pang Xiao. The disaster is wreaking havoc. Your majesty's relief of food only gave this king 8 carts. It has already been used up from the capital to here. The journey to the south is long, and the relief of the imperial court will not be able to arrive in a short period of time. The weather is getting colder by the day, and the people are suffering from hunger and cold. How are they going to survive? When Xie Yu and Su Weiji heard this, they could vaguely guess why Pang Xiao wanted to talk to them today. For a moment, they didn't speak, but carefully weighed the pros and cons in their hearts. The strategists had sharp minds and were good at scheming. Pang Xiao's words did not need to be said. Everyone understood that Pang Xiao intended to use the treasure to help the disaster victims. Wang Yi, this old man deeply admires your benevolence and devotion to the people. But you have to think about how difficult it was to obtain that treasure. And this treasure is one of your trump cards. Yeah, Wang Yi. As soon as one person spoke, others followed suit. Wang Yi is a benevolent and righteous person. For the sake of the people, he doesn't care about gold and silver. However, the emperor has always been afraid of you and has tried to kill you several times. Right now, for the sake of the princess, you have to preserve your strength. That's right. Wang Yi, if you want to achieve great things, you can't be soft-hearted and push the opportunity to others for no reason. You're sacrificing yourself and making a wedding dress for others. It hasn't been easy for you to come all this way. For the sake of Dezhou, for the sake of being loyal to your majesty, how much have you sacrificed? But how has your majesty treated you? Your majesty should be the one to help the victims. He refused to provide food, but he asked you to help the victims. He wants you to help for no reason. Such a fatuous ruler is not worthy of your help. The Taitan people have already attacked Huichuan, but the fatuous ruler is still afraid of his meritorious subjects. He's not willing to give you a chance to go to Huichuan. The few of them spoke one after another, voicing out the dissatisfaction that had accumulated in their hearts for a long time. Pang Xiao naturally knew that these people who were willing to follow him until now were all loyal and devoted. What they said was indeed true. This time, if he took out the treasure because he couldn't stand it and didn't want the people to suffer, the outcome might very well be the same as what the strategists were worried about. He would fork out the money, but all the credit would be taken by Li Qitian. Moreover, even if they didn't say it out loud, they understood in their hearts. The amount of money needed to help the victims was a bottomless pit. There were so many people in Dezhou who were affected by the disaster. Pang Xiao would have to pass through many places on his way to the old capital of the Yin dynasty. No matter how many treasures there were, how long could he last? Xie Yu sighed and said, Wang Yi, the matter of food for the people in this world shouldn't be on your shoulders. Wang Yi has sacrificed too much for the people and for Dezhou. When they heard Xie Yu say this, the other strategists immediately felt their backbone. Xie Yu and Su Weiji were Pang Xiao's two most trusted aides. It could be said that when the strategists were making decisions or couldn't find the right direction, they would first look at these two people's words. Their guesses were basically what Pang Xiao was thinking. Therefore, when Xie Yu said this, the other strategists all began to criticize Li Qitian. They criticized him for being selfish and heartless. They criticized him for not caring about the lives of the people. There were even some who slammed the table and stood up to scold him. Wang Yi, you can't be soft-hearted. You think about doing it for the people, but in the end, those people who eat the food you think of ways to get might not be grateful to you. When Pang Xiao heard this, he raised his hand. Only then did everyone's voices gradually stop. They looked at Pang Xiao expectantly. Pang Xiao looked at Su Weiji and smiled. Mr. Su, what do you think? Su Weiji looked up at Pang Xiao's handsome face. He saw his gentle smile and couldn't read any emotions. After thinking for a moment, he immediately understood. Wang Yi, I think there's a very good saying. Su Weiji stood up and bowed. Pang Xiao raised his eyebrows and wanted to laugh. Oh, Mr. Su, you're talking about that saying. Water can carry a boat, but it can also overturn it. There's another saying, the one who wins the hearts of the people rules the world. Su Weiji smiled shrewdly. He didn't elaborate and sat back down. When everyone heard this, they couldn't help but look at Su Weiji in confusion. However, they were all smart people. In the blink of an eye, they understood what Su Weiji meant. They couldn't help but feel a little disappointed. Those with more stable tempers could still hold themselves back and not say a word. Meanwhile, those who were more impatient already said anxiously, Wang Yi, you have to think carefully. If you don't get that treasure, it's very likely that it will be the foundation for you to use your troops in the future. If you use it now, you'll save those irrelevant people. You might even want to stick gold in the face of the incapable ruler. What exactly are you after? Those who achieve great things don't bother about trifles. Wang Yi, you mustn't be soft-hearted. However, Xie Yu shook his head. Everyone, you've probably forgotten why we followed Wang Yi in the first place. Their gazes shifted to Xie Yu. Xie Yu said, Everyone, what you said is reasonable. We're also doing this for Wang Yi's sake. The reason why Wang Yi is worthy of our loyalty and why we're willing to sacrifice our blood for Wang Yi. Isn't it because of Wang Ye's character? If Wang Yi doesn't care about the lives of the people at this time and only wants to protect the treasure, then what difference is there between his actions and that of an incapable ruler? Everyone was stunned when they heard this. For a moment, they couldn't find any words to refute. Xiaoyu said, "This old man agrees with Brother Su's words. Now is the time for Wang Yi to win the hearts of the people. Your Highness has a bright future ahead of you. Why should you be constrained by these yellow and white things in front of you?" The room was silent. Everyone was analyzing Xiaoyu and Su Weiji's words. It was clear that Wang Yi had already made his decision. Pang Xiao saw that everyone was silent. He stood up and said slowly, "This king followed the emperor and started the uprising because the northern Ji dynasty's incapable ruler was muddle-headed and tyrannical. He oppressed the people, and there was no peace in the world. This king wanted to restore order to the world, so he inherited his late father's unfulfilled wish and followed the emperor. Over the years, our gang's actions do not seek merit, but to not make mistakes. Even if we have to sacrifice our family and suffer some grievances, this king can endure it, because this king knows what he wants. This king doesn't want personal glory. He wants the world to become what this king wants it to be. The world is so big. The mountains and rivers are magnificent. If there are no people, how will the fields be cultivated? How will the future generations reproduce? How will a Zhou without people resist the invasion of foreign tribes? When the time comes, won't the Titan just ride straight to the capital to harvest grain?" Everyone listened to Pang Zhao's powerful words and couldn't help but feel their blood boil. That's right. They had followed Pang Xiao for many years, and they had given him advice and suggestions. They had gone through many trials and tribulations. Although they wanted to succeed the emperor, when they had followed Pang Xiao, who hadn't been filled with hot-bloodedness for the sake of the world. After so many years, they were getting closer and closer to success, but they had forgotten their original thoughts. "Everyone knows what we are doing for," Pang Xiao said in a deep voice. "This king has decided to use the Dian's treasure for disaster relief. He is really taking from the people and using it for the people. Does anyone have any objections?" After a long talk, who didn't understand Pang Zhao's thoughts? Some people objected in their hearts. They felt that the money was not worth it here. However, Pang Zhao's high-spirited posture and calmness, and the most important thing was that he always maintained his original goal, which was to let the people live a good life. They really admired him. The few of them who had been calculating their future prospects now truly understood what it meant to be hot-blooded and heroic. It even diluted their inherent thoughts. Seeing that no one objected, Pang Xiao said, "Since that's the case, this king intends to order people to quietly send the treasure back. This year, the season is not good. Most of the people's families have no harvest. Some rich merchants have already stocked up on grain in large quantities when the disaster first appeared. There's a lot of grain in this world, but it is not in the hands of your majesty. Now that this king intends to take back the treasure, he has begun to send people to search for suitable people to buy grain. Even if the price of rice is expensive, that large amount of treasure can support them for a while. After this winter, when the flowers bloom in spring next year, let the disaster victims return to their hometowns and start farming again. Their lives will be better." Wang Ye's words are reasonable. There are many profiteers who make money from the country's disaster. I'm afraid that when Wang Yi goes to buy grain, he will be covered in blood. Su Weiji warned. Pang Xiao smiled. This king knows. This king will naturally have a way to deal with these people. When the strategists saw that Pang Xiao had already made up his mind, and that no matter how much they said, they would not be able to change Pang Xiao's mind, they all quieted down and stopped pointing fingers. They only thought about how to help Pang Xiao do things well. You're tuning into the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference. As it's the primary source of revenue, that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.